We'll wait till the last minute.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm ready to call the third meeting of the Planning and Environment Committee to order. It's 1 o'clock. Please check the city website for additional meeting detail information. Meetings can be viewed via live streaming on YouTube and the city website. The City of London is situated on the traditional lands of Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Lenape-Wauk, and Adirondacks. We honor and respect the history, languages, and cultures of the diverse Indigenous people who call this territory home. The City of London is currently home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit today. As representatives of the people of the City of London, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this territory. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for meetings upon request. To make a request specific to this meeting, please contact PAC, P-E-C, at london.ca or 519-661-2489 extension 2425. At this time, I will look for any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, I'd like to move on to consent. Under the consent items, we have 4 of them. So I'll look to the committee for motions there. Councilor Ram.
Moving.
I have a mover. I look for a seconder. Deputy Mayor Lewis. We have a motion moved and seconded. Before I get into discussion or questions, I would like to go to Mr. Mathers regarding 2.1, the delegated authority for consent. And I'll briefly speak to that and just a general update on the process work that his division is doing.
Through the chair, just wanted to bring to your attention a couple of really good news stories that are on the agenda here today. So there's a lot of work that we've been performing with our industry partners. We have a group that's called the Customer Service and Process Improvement Reference Group that we meet every month to be able to look at ways that we can try to optimize and streamline our processes. So a couple of these reports have come out of that work, one being the housekeeping amendments, and the next is the delegated authority. So we're looking at some of those kind of low-hanging fruit of things that we can make some really simple changes to that will also very much improve our processes, but also don't have a huge impact or actually positively impact the community as well. In addition, I just would also like to let everybody know that we have just last week soft opened our new desk space that's on the 2nd floor. So that space provides in-person support for planning applications, building permits, and business licensing as well, inquiries, and really will help people be able to try to navigate that process. We're planning a grand opening on February 14th, and very excited about that. And we'll also be unveiling on that day the name for that counter space as well. So we're really excited about moving that forward, and really hoping that that helps with that in-person opportunity to be able to assist people that are looking for that enhanced customer service.
Thank you, Mr. Mathers, and I want to thank you for the work that you're doing to improve the efficiencies of your department. I think that's just terrific. That new site that's opened on the 2nd floor. Look forward to the opening. You know, it's challenging for many that we have heard, both from developers and for small people that are doing building projects on their own regarding building permits, et cetera, direction that they need to go. This will provide them quick access into City Hall where they can get their questions answered quickly. I will now turn over to the committee for any questions or comments regarding the consent items. Councilor Pribble.
Thank you, and through the chair to the staff. Thank you very much for the November and December building reports and the building permits. I just have a question, and I know we have, I think it's altogether 4 or 5 years that we are following or we have in this report. And when I look at the building permits, the number is lower or was lower last year. And I know there are 2 aspects of it. One is us issuing the permits, and the other one is we do issue permits, and certain developers don't start building immediately because the cost of the money is expensive now. I just want to see or ask you about the outlook in terms of when we look at previous years and looking at this year, what we have in the pipeline. Do we expect kind of the building permits to go, both actually building permits and also number of units, because the number of units is important as well. How do we see it as the outlook coming into this year, what we have in the pipeline? Are we kind of in line more with last year or hopefully going back to previous years? Thank you.
I'll go to staff on that question.
Through the chair, what's been really good about having these industry conversations is that they're able to provide us a little bit of input as far as what they're seeing in the community. There's still a lot of trepidation from purchasers of new homes and new properties as far as moving forward due to the lack of change in the interest rates. So they are they're optimistic, but cautiously optimistic. If there was another uptick in interest rates and people thought it was not correcting over time, that they definitely would be a negative impact on this year. But it is looking cautiously optimistic compared to the previous year.
Councillor.
Thank you very much for that answer. I don't have any more questions, but I will add a comment that it's not just me, it's my fellow other councillors are, of course, in daily, weekly contacts with the developers, and they are really, they like the changes that are happening in our planning and building. So thank you for that, and I hope we stay on track on that, and we'll just keep moving forward. But thank you for the first initiatives.
Any other comments or questions from committee or Councillor Rahman?
Thank you, and through you. My first question pertains to the consent, delegated consent piece of the report. Just with respect to the bylaw, what changes can we foresee? And then one of the things I was a little bit confused on, I'll blame it on, again, being new. With the Committee of Adjustment, I believe that we have a provincial obligation, excuse me, to have a Committee of Adjustment. When we remove things from Committee of Adjustment to become part of the consent authority, delegate consent, at what point do we change the scope of the committee so much that we need to then reevaluate the scope of the committee is kind of where I'm going, but hope you might be able to help me with that.
I'll go to staff on that. There's two questions, one regarding bylaw changes, and the other one is impact on the Committee of Adjustments in the larger picture.
Thank you. Through the chair, so the Committee of Adjustment will still oversee the minor variance applications. So all minor variance applications will continue to proceed to Committee of Adjustment. For consent applications, lot creation is the only one that currently goes to the Committee of Adjustment. All other application types are delegated authority to the Director of Planning and Development. So that will continue to be that. And then everything is just under the Director. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you. Looking at the the reports that we receive, the monthly updates, one, I understand that we are moving away from these updates. Just wondering in terms of a timeline as to when we can expect not to receive them, because I feel like I will be disappointed when I don't. So that would be very nice to know. And then I have a question about page 25, the TBD % time with staff, and when we'd be able to see that number. Thank you.
Mr. Mathers.
Through the chair, so I have referenced that we're making changes to how we do all of our reporting related to housing. So council will have an opportunity to see that when we bring forward our housing supply action plan. So we're targeting that for the March PEC meeting. And that's something we have another reference group that's been working with the industry. So we're pulling that together right now. It's going to highlight what we're suggesting as changes. You will still get building information. You'll still get building information, but we just want to make sure that it's timely and not something that necessarily would come every month anymore, but you'd be able to get the same kind of data. What we really want to focus on is not just have the data, but have the analysis. So like the question that Councillor Bribble asked, have some of that content in there versus just trying to have like a data dump to yourselves too. So that's very much what we're focusing on. That would be in March.
Councillor.
Thank you. And just with the % time with staff, sorry.
Yeah. Through the chair. So on the % side with staff, What we're doing now is actually starting to incorporate that as something that we're tracking. We weren't historically doing that. So before we can actually start bringing the data forward, we just need to start collecting it and then make sure that it impacts a substantial number of the applications so that it's actually a valid number. So that's something we've just started to be able to track.
Counselor.
Thank you. To follow up, when does that officially, I guess, start, that on-the-clock % time with staff, especially now with our new counter and people coming in for questions? Just if you can give us an understanding, what is the start of when that's considered with a staff person?
Mr. Mathers.
Yeah. So all of our submissions are online, so it would start when that submission is made online and it's been reviewed by our staff member. So that is when that time period would start.
Counselor. Any other comments or questions before I call the vote? Okay, with this on our consent items, moved and seconded, we'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Moving to our scheduled items, 3.1. We have a visit from Ms. Bergman for a delegation, who's the chair of the Community Advisory Committee on Planning, regarding the first report. So Ms. Bergman, I'll call on you right now to address the committee.
Hi there. Through the chair, I hope everyone can hear me.
We can hear you. Please go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, great. So yes, through the chair, I just wanted to, there's really one main item on our report, so the Community Advisory Committee on Planning's report, that I wanted to bring to your attention, and that was 300 and 306 Princess Ave. That's the notice of planning application and the zoning official plan and zoning bylaw amendments. And really, we want to. We think it's important as a committee to, not just come and identify when we have concerns, but also identify when we really feel positively about an application. And this is one of those times. I know the committee and other members of the community as well have been very concerned about the state of these two homes. These are some very impressive homes here in the Woodfield community. And lately, they have been boarded up for the past, I'm not sure how long, but probably close to 6 months. And so we've just been really, really concerned about the state of those buildings. And so to see kind of a sympathetic, gentle density style of proposal come in for these houses, where we're seeing some additions to the back to introduce a few extra units. It's really, really encouraging, and it's really the type of application that really excites us, and we hope that it kind of brings in the needed improvements to these properties and introducing some more units into a neighborhood that people really want to live in. So I just wanted to kind of come virtually in person, just to show that the committee was very encouraged to see that application, because we have been very concerned about these structures. So that was the main item that I really wanted to share. Again, the committee was very encouraged to see that application, and we hope that the applicant will continue to work with staff through the heritage alteration permit process to identify the specifics of the restoration work. I know there was quite a few mitigation measures and recommendations identified in the HIA. So we just want to ensure that those get carried through as it goes through site plan approval. And then there was also a couple of properties. We've been seeing these applications for demolition and removal from the Heritage Register associated with the BRT projects and improvements. And I just wanted to note there was some concern and quite a bit of discussion over the demolition of these properties. Ultimately, we support staff's recommendation to approve the demolition requests. But we also just wanted to, the committee just wanted to be clear that, there was some regret there for the loss of these structures, but we understand what needs to happen there. So just sharing some thoughts from the committee on those two items. So thanks very much again for having me through the chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bergman. I'll look to the committee for motion to receive the report. Deputy Mayor Lewis and moves and Councillor Robin seconds. Any discussion? Then I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to 3.2. This is regarding 900 Wilton Grove. I'll look for a motion to open the public participation meeting. Councillor Hillier, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lewis, and I'll call that vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Any technical questions for staff at this time from committee or visiting councilors? Seeing none, then I'll go to the applicant. If the applicant is here and would like to address the committee, please let us know. Thank you, sir. Please give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Planning and Environment Committee. My name is Adam LeGroux. I'm a planner with Monteith Brown Planning Consultants. I'm here with Jay McGuffin, Principal Planner at Monteith Brown Planning Consultants. And we're the planners for Blackbridge Property, Inc., who own and operate Rocky Harley-Davidson at 900 Wilton Grove Road. We're here to represent our client's amendment to the light industrial zone on their lands to add a range of accessory permitted uses, including a personal service establishment, tattoo parlor, and barbershop for a maximum total gross floor area of 40 meters squared. The proposed amendment is primarily technical in nature, as the proposed accessory use is not customarily incidental to the main permitted use of light industrial land. We believe that the tattoo parlor and barbershop will add value to the customer experience, providing additional opportunities for economic growth and for the clientele to cut their hair and get tattoos while servicing their vehicles or attending seminars and events. The proposed use will operate fully within the existing building. No external modifications to the footprint are proposed, and everything will happen during the existing hours of operation. We've had the opportunity to review the staff report and fully support staff's recommendation to approve the proposal. We believe that the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the London Plan, and maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. We're available to respond to any questions from the committee or public. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now look for anyone that would like to address us from the public. Please go to a microphone or let us know online. I see no one in chambers here. I'll ask the clerk if there's anyone online that would like to address us.
Through the chair, there's no one online.
Okay, seeing there's no others that would like to speak, then I'll look for a motion from the committee to close the PPM. Councillor Rahman, seconded by Councillor Hillier. I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. I'll go to committee now for hopefully a motion to get things kicked off. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Deputy Mayor moves the staff recommendation, seconded by Councillor Rahman. I'll open the floor to the committee for questions or discussion. Seeing none, we have a motion moved and seconded. I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to 3.3. This is regarding a demolition request for 16 Wellington Road and 26, 28, and 30 Wellington Road. I'll look for a motion to open the public participation meeting. Deputy Mayor Lewis, seconded by Councillor Rahman, and I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Are there any technical questions right now for staff? Seeing none, I'm going to go directly to the public. Is there anyone in the gallery who would like to speak to this? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk if there's anyone online.
Through the chair, there's no one online.
Thank you. Seeing that there's no one that would like to address us, I will look for a motion to close the PPM. Councillor Hillier, seconded by Councillor Rahman, and I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Councillor Rahman?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you, that was quick. Wow. There's not even a chance to get my notes in order. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Lewis. Any conversation, debate? Okay, we have a motion moved and seconded. I'll call that vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Moving on to 3.4. This is regarding 3502 Manning Drive. I'll look for a motion to open the public participation meeting. Councillor Hillier, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lewis, and I'll call that vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Any questions of a technical nature for staff at this time? Seeing none, I'll go to the applicant. If the applicant would like to address us, now would be their time. Okay. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Michael Tomazinsic, and I'm from the Economic Services and Support Division, and we're assisting our friends in waste management with this application for a zoning bylaw amendment. There are two amendments here, actually. There's one for the official plan and the zoning bylaw amendment as well. The official plan amendment is essentially to refine and recognize the ecological features on our W12A site. And then the zoning bylaw amendments are intended to bring the zoning in line with the official plan. So it's for some waste management uses or zoning for waste management, as well as to recognize the ecological features in the aforementioned London Plan Amendment. It should be noted, though, that notwithstanding the requested amendments, there is no intention to store additional waste material on these expanded lands. These lands are being zoned to accommodate additional ground monitoring, some soil storage, and vehicular transportation routes. But as for neighborhood impacts, there are no additional impacts anticipated with zoning bylaw amendment. I do have colleagues online from Waste Management, just in case there's any technical questions, but we like to thank our colleagues in planning for supporting this application and looking forward to answering any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Once we get through the PPM, I'm sure committee will be looking to you. Any folks from the public that would like to address the committee at this time? Please, sir, if you could give us your name, and you have 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
My name is Mike Williams. I live in the area of Glenworth. My understanding of this proposal is that the landfill is to, the height of the landfill is to increase 5-fold. That's what's been detailed to me specifically, and there's no mention of that here. Somehow his introduction was limited to it being a periphery of a landfill. My concerns, which I've addressed to this council years back, are odors coming from that landfill. You have multiple odor complaints that come in on a regular basis, and it's very specific as to why there's these odors coming. And it's because you're putting that bioset, which is called sewage, into the landfill. and you're covering it with garbage on a temporary basis as you're filling the landfill. Those sewage odors mixed with those garbage odors are atrocious. Anyone who's driving from St. Thomas to London knows how bad that can be on a regular basis. The impact on the community is quite significant. You're supposed to be developing a community. You're destroying one out there. Compensation should be the first and foremost on the subject, or on the top of your minds as to what you're going to do for the community out there. Property value protection should, in my opinion, must encompass all areas that are downwind of that landfill. And at this time, it can be 2 to 5 kilometers, depending on the day. It can be even 10 kilometers some days. There's so much to say on this topic, I can't even fit it into 5 minutes. Being on the PLC committee, I've addressed all these concerns with the city officials and dismissed every time. Every 2 months we meet, and it's dismissed every 2 months. The councillor comes to these meetings and hands are tied, nothing they can do. I see they're not even here today, either of our councillors. I don't know where to go with this. Like, do we have to start dropping lawsuits? Not everybody can afford a $60,000 retainer to a lawyer. At risk to themselves. They're not guaranteed to win anything. You're going up against the Corporation of London. You guys are supposed to be building communities. Well, you're destroying one out there. What are you going to do about this? Continue to do so is what I'm hearing. Continue to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the committee? Is there anyone online, clerk?
Through the chair, there's no one online.
Thank you. Seeing no one else would like to speak to the committee, I'll look for a motion to close the PPM. Councillor Robin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lewis, and I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Okay, I'll put this on the floor now for the committee. Any questions or motions? Deputy Mayor Lewis.
I will move the staff recommendation.
Can I have a seconder? Councillor Rahman. Any further comments or questions of our staff or Vape? Councillor Rahman.
Thank you, and through you. So just to staff, just to reiterate what is being introduced through the motion, this is about how we're going to be using the land within this particular area, not specifically dealing separately with the issue of the increase in height at the landfill.
I'll go to staff.
Through the chair, this is just dealing with the land itself. These lands are already in the London plan as the waste management recovery area. So it's just an expansion of the zone to allow for additional buffering for the property. And there's no additional build forms or anything else on the site. It's just to accommodate what Mr. Tomazinczyk announced.
Councillor.
Thank you, much appreciated. And just a small typo to correct on this subject, just the ward number.
Can staff identify the incorrect ward number and what would be the correct ward number for the report?
Through the chair, I think the report states that it's Ward 11 when it is actually Ward 12 that the landfill is located in.
Thank you. Any other comments, Councillor? Anyone else like to speak to this? Seeing none, we have a motion moved and seconded. I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item 3.5 regarding 4366 Colonel Talbot Road. I'll look for a motion to open the public participation meeting. Deputy Mayor Lewis, seconded by Councilor Hillier. I'll call that vote.
Sorry to be the commotion.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Any questions of a technical nature for staff at this time? And I'll go to the applicant. If the applicant would like to address the committee, please, sir, give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair Lehman, members of the committee. Appreciate your time this afternoon. Mike Davis here with Civic Planning and Design and representing our clients, Kevlar Development Group and Infinity Foods Group. Really excited to be reaching this milestone with this project today. This is it's an interesting and important site in Lambeth. It's a portion of the former McEachern School, which has received significant investment from Kevlar Development Group over the past few years to transform that building into what's now a modern kind of health and wellness center. The site in particular was a former parking lot that served the school. What's interesting from a redevelopment perspective is that it has a frontage on Colonel Talbot Road, and Colonel Talbot Road that you see today is planned to be much different in the future. It's planned to be, there's a vision for this segment of Colonel Talbot to actually evolve into a more urban and pedestrian-oriented type of space, a Main Street kind of vision or environment. And that vision was something that we communicated very early to our clients that would be extremely important to the City of London. And what we've been able to do here is work with them and develop what is really a new urban format quick service restaurant concept that it breaks the mold of your typical quick service restaurant that you would see in a big box shopping plaza. It's got many unique design features. We've been able to position the building directly adjacent to the street. We've oriented it in a way that allows for a high degree of built edge along Colonel Talbot, and what that does is screens a lot of the back of house functions, the parking area, waste collection, vehicular circulation, things of that nature. This model includes a pedestrian pickup window with direct connection out to the sidewalk on Colonel Talbot, a front door oriented towards Colonel Talbot, and also an outdoor patio space. Also, with this specific concept plan that we've conceived, we've been able to achieve 30% landscape open space or green space, which is significantly higher than you would see with a typical suburban quick service restaurant. That number would come in more around 10 or 15. So lots of opportunities with this specific concept to look at canopy coverage, tree planting, things of that nature. With the work that's been done and the conceptual plans that we've developed with Wendy's, they've truly kind of bought into this vision and are really excited about kind of integrating into the fabric of Colonel Talbot Road and Lambeth. But and we're generally really pleased with the staff recommendation. I do have 2 matters, we could call them kind of friendly amendments, that I do want to table with committee. I did provide an email with those potential amendments both to clerk for circulation to committee and to planning staff just in advance in case there's any dialogue about those. But firstly, in terms of recommendation B, we had a lot of good dialogue with staff through the process. We've landed on a mutually acceptable zoning bylaw, which is what they are recommending and what's in Appendix A of the report. We understood that our request relative to recommendation B had actually been withdrawn from our application. And so my request is that that recommendation actually just be stricken because that provision no longer forms part of our application. So that's the first request. The second, within the directions to site plan approval authority, there is a very explicit direction under subsection I that speaks to reorienting the drive-through to exit internal to the site as opposed to Colonel Talbot. And we're fully committed to looking at and exploring those alternative sort of configurations for that drive-through lane through the site plan process. My one fear, though, is that that direction is overly sort of narrow, and doesn't give us the space to truly look at the overall site layout from what's going to be the best design outcome. So we're just simply requesting that some of that language be modified to take sort of a more holistic view of the site design to land on what's going to be the optimal drive-through orientation. So some of those things that we'd consider in doing that: pedestrian safety, considering both pedestrian traffic on Colonel Talbot and users of the site, the provision of landscape open space, opportunities for tree planting and canopy coverage, the degree to which the design reinforces the Main Street vision for Colonel Talbot, the degree to which functional elements such as waste collection, loading space, and parking can be effectively screened from view from Colonel Talbot, and then also impacts to the adjacent arterial road network, and of course, traffic safety considerations. We really think that it should be a holistic consideration, and perhaps until that analysis happens, it might not be the right time to totally close the door on the concept of the exit on.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Your time has expired. Anyone from the public that would like to address the committee on this topic? Is there anyone online, clerk?
Sorry. Through the chair, there's no one online.
Okay, thank you. I see a gentleman at the microphone at the top. Please, sir, if you could give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Mario Zuech, Z-U-E-C-H, and I own the property on 4366 Colonel Talbot Road. My concern is the drive-through, because the drive-through goes by. We have 2 apartments and a business on the front, and the drive-through goes right through by the window of the apartment there. So, in the pickup window, they stop right there. So it's going to be traffic all day and night. So that's my concern about it. You know. And that's all I have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to address the committee from the public? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to close the PPM. Councillor Rahman, seconded by Councillor Hillier. I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
So I'll open the floor for the committee members for discussion. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
So after the applicant has presented, I wonder if we could go to staff to get some comment on what we heard about Section B, and in Section I, the CI, the relocation of the drive-through internal to the site, indicating that B is actually is no longer part of the plan, and around the language on C1. I'm just wondering if staff can offer some perspective from their side about what would be appropriate in terms of dispensing with those concerns.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We'll go to staff on those questions and comments.
Through the chair, so ultimately the applicant is amending their application in a sense. So our decision in Part C was based on the proposal that was in front of us with the drive-through coming out. So if council were to remove Part B, I can understand maybe providing more flexibility to Part C. Again, Part C was based on the fact that we were not permitting the drive-through out to the road. Therefore, you would have to look at the internal as the only option for the drive-through.
Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to ask that question. I know the ward councillor is here, so I'd like to hear what the ward councillor has to say before opinioning anything else on this application.
Okay, I'll look for other comments. Councillor Hopkins.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me, and thank you to the applicant as well. For the open house virtual meeting that you set up, it's important that we reach out to the community. We've heard a lot from this community. There was a petition sent in. We heard from one of the neighbors to the south, the concerns of a drive-through. If you look at the map, you could see the surrounds are residential. I'm pleased that the consultant is striking out B, which is fine, but the concerns around having an exit onto Colonel Talbot came from transportation. This is a safety concern. It is about movement and how it's all going to work. I know that through the site plan process, they'll be able to address new plans, the buffering that they will be doing to the east, maybe through you, Mr. Chair, just a quick question through you to staff, if you can speak to the buffering to the east of residential property. I know there's lots of landscaping, 30% is good, but what else can be done to mitigate some of the challenges?
I'll go staff.
Through the chair, there will be buffering looked at during the site plan application stage to the east and to the north to those residential uses. So we did implement them to have a landscaping buffer, and they also might have to consider also other aspects from the noise study, like noise barriers or different aspects like that. Thank you.
Councillor.
Yeah, thank you for that. So that would be something like a wall as well. I know we heard from the neighbor to the south the challenges, and I really would encourage the neighbor to work with the applicant as well to see how that can be, what can be done there. It's going to create a lot of challenges, a lot of changes, given the proximity of the residential house to the south, but I think that can be done. I'm glad there's going to be a noise study done on this property as well. That's really important. But I would really encourage the committee to not change C. I think there are alternative plans that can be done, but that can be done through the site plan. I want to stress the importance of that exit onto Colonel Talbot and the movement, the patterns, people walking. It really should be not stricken off the C clause. So our policy supported. We did make a slight revision to having this a business district commercial neighborhood zone in the area. I know lots of changes are happening here. It partly is that residential component with this drive-through coming in. The applicant is doing great work with the McEachran School. This is part of that redevelopment. Lots of exciting development going in the area, but how do we balance that with the residents? I really would like the committee to consider that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions or motions from the committee? Deputy Mayor Lewis.
So I just want to follow up on Councillor Hopkins' comments and through you to our staff. You know, the section C indicates the landscape buffer, and I'm just reflecting on the drive-throughs in my own ward where it's both landscaping and privacy fencing and or sound retention walls, and so I'm trying to just seek some clarity on why right now we only have, and I recognize that sound studies may influence what needs to go there, but why we only have the landscaping and not a privacy fencing and or sound retention wall to separate from the residential, because that's a pretty standard thing where drive-throughs abut residential, and I don't see it in here. So I'm wondering if we can get some comment on why landscaping is the only thing recommended.
I'll go staff.
Thank you, through the chair. So looking at the recommendation clause to the approval authority, as you noted, item 3, is implement the recommendations of the noise study. And looking at the noise study, there is a requirement for a 2.4 meter noise attenuating barrier along that property line. So it would be landscaped and supplemented with that noise attenuation wall.
Deputy Mayor?
That's fine. I just want to make sure that that's something that's going to be in consideration here. And so I know that Mr. Pease and his team will follow up through site plan, so that covers that. I'm prepared to move the staff recommendation.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Hillier? Any further comments or questions? Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thanks. I just want to say, with regard to the drive-through, I really do think it's important as we develop these sites, particularly along high-use corridors, as Colonel Talbot Road obviously is, that we do have consideration for limiting the number of access points. The more points coming in and out of a site, the more chance that we have a transportation conflict and a vehicular accident. I heard from our police chief at one of my ward town hall meetings just last week how motor vehicle fatalities in our city are at an all-time high. And while that's not directly related to a site plan on any particular application, I think it reflects the fact that as our traffic volume increases, as our population increases, that there is a need both for enforcement, but also for thoughtful planning in terms of how we manage traffic coming in and out of primary collectors or arterial roads where the traffic volume is in the tens of thousands on any given day. So I appreciate where the applicant's trying to go, but I do think we need to keep the drive-through interior.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? If the committee will permit me, I'll make a few comments from the chair. I concur with the deputy mayor. For sure, we want to make access as convenient as possible for our commercial businesses. However, that has to be balanced, as the deputy mayor said, with traffic flow and in dealing with our roads and planning folks. There's a long-term view that they are always considering, and Colonel Talbot is one of those roads that's going to get has increasingly more traffic. And so what might seem okay today might not be good for 5-10 years down the road. So there's a balance to be struck with commercial interests as well as general traffic flows for many reasons, safety and also for general flow of traffic to make sure that it's moving as efficiently as possible. So I will be supporting the staff recommendation. If there are no other comments or questions, we have a motion moved and seconded, and I will call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to 3.6. This is regarding 934 Oxford Street West. I'll look for a motion to open the public participation meeting. Deputy Mayor Lewis, seconded by Councillor Hillier. I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Any technical questions for staff at this time from committee members? Seeing none, I'll look for the applicant, see if the applicant would like to address the committee. Please, ma'am, give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Taylor Whitney. I'm a planner with Zelenka Priamo Limited, the planning consultant representing the landowner of 934 Oxford Street West. I would like to use my time today to provide some background on the information before you today, being the staff report recommending refusal, the letter that I've provided, and the proposed motion provided by Deputy Mayor Lewis. We submitted a zoning bylaw amendment application in November of 2023 to permit a 3.5-story, 8-unit residential development. Just before the holidays, we received comments from city staff which detailed several issues to the site layout and build form of the proposed development, and it was clear from those comments that staff wouldn't be supportive of the development in that form, hence the staff report before you today. We had the opportunity to meet with city staff in early January to discuss their concerns and brainstorm potential solutions to address the issues that were identified. As a result, we were able to provide a revised development plan which generally addressed staff's concerns. The revised plan has a more efficient site layout, which also provided the opportunity to increase the number of units on the lands from 8 to 10. City staff had the opportunity to complete a preliminary review and indicated that they would be able to recommend approval in the revised form. The letter that I've provided provides an analysis of how the revised development plan addresses staff's concerns at the initial application. Notable changes include reorienting the building to address the Oxford Street frontage, rearranging the parking lot, and increasing setbacks to provide appropriate separation space and to mitigate privacy concerns. We've had initial conversations with our engineering and landscaping consultants who have advised that there would still be sufficient sanitary capacity to support the additional 2 units and advised that the revised layout may allow for the retention of more trees on site. However, due to legislative changes imposed by the province last year, council decision is required 90 days from the date an application is submitted. So in this instance, this puts city staff in a difficult position because they have insufficient time to recirculate the revised development plan without having to refund the application fees. We were advised by staff that we would have to accept the refusal of the initial application from this committee and then file a new application which the fee would be waived for. This would extend the approvals process by several months and essentially require a duplication of city staff's time and efforts on this application. In comparison, this time last year, staff could have simply recirculated the revised plan internally and had it on the next PEC agenda. I would like to thank staff for their work on this project to date. They've been put into a tricky position due to provincially mandated timelines, but we've been able to work together to come up with the mutually agreeable solution in front of you today. Given this, I would respectfully request that this committee consider the revised development plan and revised bylaw at this meeting. It's our opinion that the revised plan addresses all of the relevant staff's comments relating to access, parking, building orientation, setbacks, and privacy. I'm available to answer any questions you may have, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Whitney. Look for any folks from the public that would like to address the committee. I see you, ma'am, up in the gallery there at the mic. Please give us your name, and you have 5 minutes. Excuse me, ma'am, we can't hear you. I'm going to make sure the microphone's on.
Okay. Hello?
There we go.
My name is Cleo Beck. I'm speaking on behalf of Angus Johnson and Green Space Alliance. Of the 6 projects on your agenda, one is of most concern in regard to global warming. It is the development at 934 Oxford. 934 Oxford is another case of delivering a 1-2 emissions punch to the City of London. It will bring 77 cars to town, and by removing 25 trees, will eliminate the means by which those car emissions should be mitigated. Angus Johnson has objected to other approved 1-2 punch projects like this, and there are many in the city plans, but the 1-2 punch itself is not the main reason to reject these projects. Developments completed in the last 30 years have removed thousands of trees, and there are thousands more trees listed for removal. As a result, hundreds of acres now show up in the random emissions map in yellow, a color that means the area is doing an inadequate job at removing emissions because of lack of vegetation. In the 39 pages of development plans for London, from page 1 to the first project on page 11, 1,006 trees will be removed. Significantly, some plans are not formatted to show removal numbers. On page 7, the project involving 51 acres at Sunningdale Golf Club will have significant impact on trees and emissions, and it is not counted in this mix. Thousands of removals are not an exaggeration. Whatever London's current tree canopy percentage is, expanding our tree canopy over the course of a year depends upon building upon the mature trees we have. We know that the mature trees are the real leaders in the growth process and contribute most to that overall growth and protection from global warming. Protecting our existing canopy means ensuring that the number of trees removed does not exceed the normal expected growth in a growing season. Ensuring that the canopy expands in a year means cutting back less than what is in the base amount prior to the year's growth. Therefore, the reason for rejecting this plan to cut down 25 trees at 934 Oxford is our lack of knowledge about the impact. We don't know the impact of cutting back those 25 trees on the tree canopy of London, Ontario, and we're in the same boat with a stack of plans for removing thousands of trees from the canopy. Before plans for cutting trees are pursued, research is needed to determine how many trees can be removed from the existing canopy before our base percentage is reduced. Only after we know what we have can we determine what trees can be safely cut. To be clear, we're not against building houses and getting people in residency. To approve cutting out thousands of trees from our tree canopy, however, without any effort to assess the effects of that loss on the health of the canopy is reckless endangerment of a public resource. Our sole ask of this committee is to find a way to fund that research and make it publicly available. While there are too many unknowns about the effect on the tree canopy of cutting down trees, the effect of more car emissions is clear. As of this writing, 222 developmental plans are filed for London with the addition of 23,660 new households. Multiply 23,660 by a 0.66 car dependency rate for X households of 2.4 people, and we are looking at a huge increase in car emissions. There's a potential increase of 37,477 cars, a 14% increase if the plans are passed. Add that to a car population that is already 273,000. The key point is that vegetation that is being cut back dramatically will be processing at least 14% more on the rise tailpipe emissions. Clearly, the remaining vegetation will not be able to do the job. Google's environmental transportation emission numbers for London already suggest that in 2023, we may have already exceeded the pre-COVID 2019 high of 824,000 tons of carbon dioxide. It can only get worse from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to address the committee? Please, ma'am, state your name, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Anna Maria Velastro. So the staff recommendation is to refuse this development because they refer to it as an over-intensification. What that means is the building is too big for the land mass. And because it's too big, it can't service itself, which means it can't take care of itself. It can't maintain itself. It doesn't have enough room to do that. And that, that has very negative impacts on the surrounding residents, the surrounding area it's imposing. That's why you don't over-intensify a piece of land. And on top of it, it can't service its own runoff. So because there's not enough open space for flood control. That's what open space does. It keeps water out of the storm sewer system so it can be absorbed back into the ground, and is stressing out the storm sewer systems. So much so that now the Carling Creek Master Plan Storm Sewer Project is actually suggesting that underneath McMahon Park that we build a big water reservoir to take the overcapacity stormwater whenever it overwhelms the system. It goes into this big storage unit underneath the park. And that's because this committee perpetually, over and over again, approves buildings that are too big for the land it sits on. And now there is a motion on the floor introduced by Councillor Sean Lewis that is going to override the staff recommendation. It is brief, and then it suggests that it complies with the policy statement, the official plan, when staff say it doesn't comply with policy. and it's being introduced. And I personally, I may be wrong about this, but I personally find that manipulative and maybe even dishonest.
I will caution you on your comments about motives from
This is
committee
my
members.
opinion. This is my opinion.
I don't care if it's your opinion or not. You can thoroughly talk about the facts at hand, but not to motives.
So the facts on hand is that there is a motion on the floor right now that overrides.
There is no motion on the floor, ma'am.
It hasn't been introduced, but it's going to be introduced as soon as I'm done speaking. And I feel it also is insulting to members of the public that come down here to generally express their views, because the motions has been written and it's going to be introduced right after I'm done speaking. So I think that the refusal from staff is wise. The building is too big for the land it sits on. It can't service itself. It can't absorb its own runoff. And that puts stress on the stormwater system. And taxpayers pay tens of millions of dollars for these projects simply because we're over-intensifying the land and the land can't function as it's meant to function.
Thank you. Any other comments or from the public? I'll ask the clerk if there's anyone online.
Through the chair, Mike Zwart.
Please, sir, we can hear you online. Give us your name and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, my name is Michael Zwart. I'm a representative of Oak Ridge Presbyterian Church. We are not really impacted significantly as a church by the development of 934 Oxford Street. I understand where some of these other comments are coming from, and we need to pay attention to that. I also have concerns about the lack of affordable housing in this city, and how do we address that when this is not a project that falls under that category? I think that's an urgent situation, and how do we deal with that as a society or a city like London? Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swart. Any other comments? Anyone who wishes to address the committee? I'll ask clerk if there's anyone else online.
Through the chair, there's no one else online.
Okay, seeing that no one else would like to speak, I'll look for a motion to close the PPM. Deputy Mayor Lewis, seconded by Councillor Hillier, and I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. I'll open up the floor for this discussion amongst committee members. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I did circulate in advance an alternate motion and an alternate bylaw that staff helped me prepare. So I'm prepared to put that on the floor. And then if there's a seconder to that, I'll speak to the reasons. But I will preface it by saying, here we are. This is the first application on Bill 109 where the time frame is now impacting us.
Okay, I'll look for a seconder. Councillor Hillier? Okay, I'll go to Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. So as I said in my comments, here we are with Bill 109. So we have a legislative change from the province. So, and then we had an applicant who brought in an application. There were some staff concerns. The applicant worked with staff. We had a Christmas closure impacting our timeline. And if we do not make a decision on this, either refuse or approve by February 13th, then either the application moves forward or we'd be in a situation where we would have to refund. Staff's recommendation is just waive the fee for the next application. But I'm concerned that we start to get into a process where we are deciding on when we're waiving, when we're refunding, what we're doing with applications where we run up against this 90-day statutory deadline. So last week I had the opportunity to meet with the applicant. I had the opportunity to meet with staff. I know that both sides said, yes, we were working on this. We were very, very close to being able to bring forward a recommendation to you, except we don't have time to recirculate and still meet the February 13th deadline. So that's why I'm prepared to put the alternate motion on the floor. This is taking a residential property and adding 10 units. I do want to share with the representative from the Presbyterian Church. Unfortunately, there is another change in provincial legislation. We no longer have bonusing, so we cannot require affordable housing units in our planning application processes. So that is a tool that's been taken out of our toolbox. I agree with the applicant or with the representative that affordable housing is certainly needed. And I would encourage him to also take a look at the number of business cases in our multi-year budget that do address affordable housing through other approaches rather than through planning application processes where we don't have those tools. But that's why I think that this is important to move forward today. We are on an arterial road in Oxford, on Oxford Street West. This is exactly the place where we want to see infill and intensification. There is transit service there. You are near a commercial area at Wonderland and Oxford, as well as at Oxford and Hyde Park. So there's good amenities in the area. There's transit service. And this is a recommendation that's coming forward after both the applicant and staff ran out of time to finalize this before a 90-day statutory deadline.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from committee members? Councillor Rahman.
Thank you, and through you. I appreciate the work of the Deputy Mayor to work with the applicant to bring through this revised or proposed motion. But I would really need to hear from staff on this. I'm just wanting to understand, did the proposed motion change and address the concerns that were outlined in the refusal? Does it give staff enough information to make a different decision based on the conversation that was had? I'm struggling with that because I feel like in order to agree to what's in front of us, I have to understand whether or not you've had a fulsome opportunity to really review the changes and whether or not they meet the requirement that you were looking for, specifically around the intensity and also related to the access management guidelines. And I have concerns when we start talking about precedent setting and then going forward with that. So if you could comment on that, that would be really helpful.
Thank you. So the councillor is looking to see if the revised suggested amendments or revised application, in a sense, addresses the three areas that are outlined for reasons for staff refusal in our report. Please go ahead.
Through the chair. So as was noted, we received the revised plan near the end of the process. In our opinion, we haven't had significant or sufficient time to provide a positive recommendation at this point in time. Given the increase in height and intensity of the development, we would like to recirculate it and do a fulsome review of the application. There were some positive changes in the development. However, I don't think we're in a place based on those changes to provide a recommendation for approval today.
Councillor.
Thank you. And then, again, I'll go with that. I'm new. With this process where we have an amendment, does the amendment allow for you then to have adequate time with it following to be able to have ongoing discussions if there are issues still with the application? To me, it seems like we're limiting the scope of the ability for staff to comment if we approve it. And I'm just trying to get a better sense if you feel like there's enough opportunity to continue to look at this.
I'll go staff.
Through the chair, just to confirm, if the development was approved today, as in the zoning, so if that was the case, it would just go to, actually it doesn't go to site plan approval. So the zoning would be in place and they could apply for a building permit.
Councillor.
Thank you. And that's another particular change I think that we have to consider along with the timeline change is that this no longer goes through that same site plan. So for that reason, I I think that although I agree that we're running up against this timeline, we're learning through this process. It's not our process that created the timeline challenge as well. I think that that's to be noted as well. I think staff have a reasonable, I think they've presented us with a reasonable language on the refusal. I think that what's in front of us is unfortunate, but we do have a remedy in that we can waive that fee at the next application, and I'm supportive of what's in front of us from staff.
I'll go to Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you. I know there's another committee member there too. Happy to hear the committee members' comments before I make mine. I just have a couple questions.
I'll go to Councillor Frank.
Thanks. I wouldn't have minded, Councillor Hopkins, if you went first, but all right. Mine was similar to Councillor Rahman. At this point, it feels like we'd be approving something that hasn't been reviewed by staff, and given that there's no site plan oversight at 10 units or less, it doesn't seem that we'd have appropriate amount of time or ability to work with the applicant. And I agree that it is really unfortunate because it sounds like it's pretty much ready to go, except for a couple revisions and tweaks. So I'm wondering, perhaps through the chair to staff, given that we're running into these issues, and I'm not sure if this is the first one. This is the first one that I've kind of noticed regarding the 90-day turnaround time. I'm wondering if there's been any discussions at any of the housing action plan teams or the continuous improvement teams. I know you have lots of different tables you meet with the industry on, but any discussion about raising this and elevating it as an issue? I could see a remedy being having both the applicant and staff mutually sign to extend a timeline. I'm just wondering if that's something that's been raised at any of those tables as discussion items.
I'll go to staff.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Chair. Know that we have not had those conversations. That's something certainly that we as staff had identified as recommendations to the province in our responses back to them as a means to advance these applications forward. And I believe what you may be referring to, Councillor, is something that's under the Heritage Act, where if it's a mutual understanding, a letter that's written and signed to then allow for that extension. But that does not exist under the Planning Act.
Councillor.
Thank you. Yes, that is what I'm referring to. So I'm wondering, perhaps, I don't want to add more work to you guys because I never want to do that, but perhaps if that could be an issue that's raised at one of your working groups as a discussion, because I worry that this will be the first of many that we run into this issue. But I think at this point, given that we aren't able to fully work with the applicant legislatively, I won't be supporting this application, or I won't be supporting the Deputy Mayor's amendment, and instead would prefer to support the staff's recommendation.
I'll go to Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me. I really do appreciate just making a couple comments to the committee. I appreciate Deputy Mayor's position on and the importance of getting things built in our city. I agree the affordability conversation has been taken away from us, which is really unfortunate here at the Planning and Environment Committee. When I look at this application, the road dedication that's not there on Oxford is a huge concern. I think that is something that we have to be very, very mindful of as we go forward with the process of putting in some development. I hear the community when it comes to trees. These infills are always challenging when it comes to taking away the trees. We really need to understand when we do that, what are we putting back in? I think there's still a lot to be done. I'm really pleased that we can waive a fee. That, I think, is something that should be taken into consideration as we are challenged with the tight timelines that the province has given us. But those are my comments. I really appreciate you hearing them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments from committee members? I'll look to the Vice Chair, if he could take the chair, as I'd like to comment on this.
It's my motion, so you'll have to go to somebody else.
Correct. I will go to Councillor Rahman on this. To take the chair, please.
Thank you. I have the chair. I'll recognize Councillor Lehman.
Thank you. This is in my ward, and I've met with the community there, with the developer in attendance as well, to address community concerns. I agree with with staff's report here. This is a one lot that, in my opinion, a development is being kind of forced into here. The comments that it's too intense and cannot meet site design requirements such as appropriate building and parking area setbacks, appropriate parking configuration, impact mitigation, waste and snow storage. Very, very concerning. But the most concerning thing for me, and it kind of ties back to the previous item that we had before the committee, was access points onto Oxford Street. Oxford Street is, like Colonel Talbot, is increasingly becoming an entry point for people not only living west of Thames River, in fact, so much so that there's a planned bridge expansion there, but also on the west, outside the city limits, for development out there that are using Oxford Street as a corridor. To have multiple access points on Oxford Street, given the amount of traffic, is very concerning for the same points that we raised with the item on Colonel Talbot. The other thing that concerns me here too is we're to do something quickly to meet the 90 days. I share the Deputy Mayor's frustration with the 90 days and obviously Councillor's questions regarding staff looking at this to see how we can improve this so it doesn't get to this point. But to change height and density, having the committee to essentially make the call on that at this point is, I don't think, a good precedent in going forward. Height and density were the major concerns of the community, and to increase both those factors without having the community have a chance to weigh in that, as well as having staff to properly identify whether those would address the concerns and the refusal in the first place, I think is not a preferred path forward, for me personally anyway. So I will not be supporting the motion. If the motion fails, I will be supporting acceptance of the staff recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Returning the chair to you with no one on the speakers list.
Thank you. Councillor, please go ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to speak at your committee. I rarely come here to speak, but I'm here twice today. Yeah, 3 times today. I just want to very briefly say that I support the staff report. At council, I will not be supporting this amendment, and I think that the staff report is very careful and is sustainable and should hold up. But I also want to say that some of the points that Councillor Lehman made really resonated with me in terms of what we're asking Oxford to do, where we're just asking Oxford to do too much. This is much further to the west of Oxford than my ward, but I share many of the Oxford-related concerns. So at council, I will be supporting the staff report, and I will not be supporting this amendment, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions before I call the vote? Okay, we have a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded, and I will call that vote.
Closing the vote, the motion fails 2-3.
Thank you, and I'll look for committee for another motion. Councillor Roman.
Thank you. I'll look to put the staff recommendation on the floor, please.
Thank you, and I will second that motion. I'll look for comments or questions. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
So I won't be supporting this motion either, and I want to be very clear. I'm not going to be supporting any recommendation that comes forward that suggests that we just retain the fee and apply it to a next application. The provincial legislation requires a refund. And so if we're not going to meet the deadlines, then I think we should be refunding and starting over from scratch, because that's the way the legislation is laid out. So I'm not really comfortable with waiving the fees either. We either need to meet our deadlines or not, and live with the consequences of that. So I won't be supporting the staff recommendation either.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? So we have a motion moved and seconded. I will call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 3-2.
Thank you. Moving on to 3.7. This is regarding housekeeping amendments to the zoning bylaw. And I'll look for a motion to open the public participation meeting. Councillor Rahman, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hillier, I'll call that vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Okay, I'll open the floor to the public that would like to address us. Please, sir, if you could give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members and visiting councilors. My name is Mike Wallace, and I'm with LDI, as many of you know already. First of all, we want to start by saying we want to thank staff for their efforts of communicating with the industry on these items. Sometimes people, committee of adjustment, you would never think our industry on the development side would ever go to committee of adjustment. Everyone thinks it's individuals going for their backyard changes and so on. But there are a tremendous amount of changes that need to happen at committee of adjustment that our industry often have to go to committee adjustment to obtain. And in review of this, working with staff, we looked at a number of very, very repetitive, costly, time-consuming changes that were always approved, and where there are an opportunity to remove those so that we don't have to continue that process. And the city has made a commitment, and the planning staff have done a very good job of working with us and trying to improve the processes for development, for approvals. And this is just one of the many items that we're dealing with. We really appreciate what has happened on this item. It is housekeeping on a number of other issues, but for us in particular was the changes that allowed in the zoning bylaw that we won't have to go to committee adjustment for. This is just part, Mr. Chair, of all the, Scott alluded to at the beginning of the meeting about all the changes in working with the community, and in the spirit, because I need to be talking to this, just so you know that we're looking at other opportunities in terms of improved processes. And as per the last application, the process of the 90 days or the other requirements that have changed under Bill 109, I should let you know that LDI has been active in promoting that there should be a right of the developer, of the applicant, to waive the fees. If we're close to having an application come to fruition, but we're missing the deadline of, let's say, 90 days in this past case, we would like the opportunity for the developer to be able to say, hey, we're working with the city, we don't want to start over. I know you're talking about a refund, but that defeats the purpose of the actual of the legislation. So I don't know how excited the province will be about that. And just so you know, not only have we done that in letter, as of last Friday, I had a meeting with the Minister of Housing, our local MPP, and that was one of the items I put on the table of changes that they could make this spring in the legislation that they're bringing forward. So we want to continue to work with the city on we appreciate the changes here. We appreciate the continued review of the zoning bylaw and how to get it connected to the official plan that's now passed through Rethink Zoning, and we thank the staff for all their efforts on this particular item here in front of you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Any other comments from the public? Is there anyone online, clerk?
Through the chair, there's no one online.
Seeing no one else would like to address us, I'll look for a motion to close the BPM. Deputy Mayor Lewis, second by Councilor Rahman. I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, and I'll put this item on the floor for committee. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Yep, I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Can I look for a seconder? Councilor Hillier. Any comments or questions? Councilor Rahman.
Thank you, and through you, I do appreciate the review of this from staff perspective to kind of plain language and make it cleaner and easier to understand. Although I do think if there was a way to do that even further, that would be great, because I do think it's still a bit meaty and difficult to get through in terms of some definitions. I'm speaking in a grade 5 class tomorrow. I may give them some of it just to have a look. But no, I do appreciate it. I do think that there was a real intentionality here to make sure that there was better understanding of the terminology that's in it and make it cleaner and easier to read. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? If the committee will allow me, I'd like to make a comment or two. I want to thank both staff, for sure, and the development community and builders out there that have worked with staff to come up with solutions that allow us to do things more efficiently, and which we're being successful at. And we're making improvements, and I know Mr. Mathers and his team continue down that road, and I look forward to hearing wonderful things like that we've heard recently. To Mr. Wallace, I wish you well in those discussions with the minister. And I hope you will convey my wishes that they recognize the efforts that the City of London is doing to doing what we can to achieve our goals that we set out for the province, and that we hope the province is seeing that and recognizing the fact that we shouldn't be punished for not getting shovels in the ground when we've done the work on getting zoning and permits done. It's incredibly frustrating for us and the committee and council, and for the staff of our planning department that we're doing this work. But for factors beyond our control, we are still financially negatively impacted. We do our job of communicating these concerns both at council and through the mayor's efforts and councilors' efforts, deputy mayor's efforts. But I ask you as well, as someone who represents the development community, to also join in that voice to have the province really look strongly at the incentivized programs that they have, so that communities such as ours that are doing the good work and getting housing promoted as quickly as possible are not negatively impacted. So I appreciate that. Thank you. If there's any other comments or questions, and we have a motion moved and seconded, I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to 3.8. This is regarding citywide 5-bedroom limits and increased permissions for additional residential units. I will look for a motion to open the public participation meeting. Moved by Councillor Hillier, seconded by Councillor Rahman, and I'll call that vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, and I will go to the public now that wish to address the committee on this matter. Please, sir, give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Arnon Kaplansky. I want to thank the member of the Planning Department for the opportunity to address the committee. I've been an infill developer and an infill builder in the City of London for 35 years. During this time, I've experienced the evolution of the official plan and the zoning bylaw. 35 years ago, responsible infill development was encouraged. This allowed healthy units development in the core. In 1988, townhouses were allowed. Today, they are not. Over time, and with every change to the official plan and zoning bylaw, the ability to create dwelling units in the core area diminished, and townhouses were eliminated from the zoning bylaw in the core. This has significantly contributed to intense urban sprawl and housing crisis that the city is in, and you can see it. In response to the growing limitation to develop in the core area, I adopted my project and started to create proper housing for students within walking distance to the university. Unfortunately, this was met with extreme resistance from the NIMBY's influence, just as the townhouses were. The city was swayed by the NIMBY's agenda and imposed arbitrary restriction on the number of bedrooms for each lot, reducing the potential for student housing. This struggle has had profound impact on the development landscape, affecting not only my project, but also the overall growth and vibrancy of the city. Student housing was forced to sprawl outward into more areas, taking up housing from the rest of the population. The municipality should support student housing right around the university. There should be no difference between near campus neighborhood and the rest of the city. The housing crisis affects everyone. Allowing more density in the near campus area will reduce the housing crisis for students and free up housing for other people. It should be a no-brainer. Limiting the number of bedrooms to 5+1 in each additional unit does not make sense financially, and for this reason, these units with 1 bedroom will not get built. Perhaps this is the intention, actually. Not to mention creating 3 separate units with 1 bedroom as opposed to also allowing 3 bedrooms in 1 unit completely goes against the environmental sustainable goals of this city. There is no legitimate reason for the area defined by the city as near campus neighborhood not to have the same rules and opportunity as the rest of the city. It defies the purpose of Bill 23. It is not proper planning, and it will get challenged at the provincial level. The city position that the proposed amendments create an opportunity for appropriate intensity in the near campus neighborhood is misleading. The so-called opportunity hardly exists. The available lot inventory that is zoned R2 or R3 and complies with the current zoning requirement for such development is minimal to non-existent due to floor area ratio and gross floor area requirement. The existing and proposed policies and regulation imposed through the zoning bylaw are preventing the creation of quality purposely built student housing near the university. The province has started reducing hardship, such as site plan approval requirement, but more needs to be done. For years, the planning department championed policies to prevent over-intensification in the core, which prevented proper intensification and created the worst urban sprawl in the city. For 35 years, I've been seeing it doing it here. The current policy changes will not help create more housing. It is to satisfy the province and Bill 23 only. It's a lip service. And to you, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask the planner that came up with the recommendation if his recommendation is purely on planning principle or he had some political pressure. Thank you.
Thank you. Look for the next person that would like to address the committee.
Hi, my name is John Reed.
Please, sir, give us your name and you have 5 minutes.
Yes, my name is John Reed. I have a property in the near campus neighborhood, and the perspective that I have is an existing property concerning the 5-bedroom increase in number of bedrooms and the opportunity to add additional residential units. With respect to the previous speaker, who I think was focused more on new development, I'm focusing on leveraging existing infrastructure, which is sort of, I believe, in line with the London plan. I would like to start by saying I feel that the city, the staff, have actually done a commendable job on trying to work within the constraints and the near campus neighborhood, because of its proximity and its age and the population, I'm sure requires some special considerations. So that said, I found working with staff very easy to work with, very forthright, and I'd like to pass on my commendation for their approach to these things. So in terms of the 5-bedroom increase, I think a significant improvement, which I'd like to commend council and staff on again, is, as I understand it, looking at, say, a triplex, 5 bedrooms per unit, total of 15 bedrooms in the house, that they're going to look at 15 bedrooms in the house rather than 5 bedrooms per unit. So in other words, you could have 6 bedrooms in one unit, less bedrooms in the other, as long as you stay within the 15-bedroom limit. I truly believe that for many landlords, that will enable them to very easily add additional bedrooms at almost immediately in the near campus neighborhood where they have a rental property that was constrained by the number of bedrooms earlier. So I think that will actually help in addressing some of the shortage in housing as it pertains to students. With the additional residential units, I also appreciate that the city is now opening that up to allow additional residential units to duplexes and triplexes where that makes sense to do so. The question that I do have, as well as just passing on my compliments to everybody here, is surrounding parking. I did notice in the planning report that there is some consideration to if an attached garage is converted to an ARU, that there'll be allowances given to park on the, I believe, the existing driveway, which could technically be in front of the house at that point. I think parking is something that needs to be considered. Many of the near campus neighborhood homes originally were serviced by laneways that have prime opportunity for ARUs and by virtue of the garages that are on those laneways, which in turn will create a bit of a parking issue if those garages are currently used for parking. So I think there is a bit of a gap in addressing what parking considerations may need to be made if, in fact, these changes result in the densification that they are intended to do. So it's kind of an open question that I appreciate if there's not consideration to actually implementing it in a bylaw, what the path forward would be to provide additional parking when it becomes necessary to do so after densification, be it by virtue of allowing parking on a front yard, which has been done throughout the majority of the near-campus neighborhood in the older homes. It looks very tasteful, it can be done properly. So I'm just curious as to how the city would like people such as myself to approach that issue, once again, be it a variance or be it by some other means to try to achieve parking if we're able to successfully densify. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look for the next speaker. Please, ma'am, can you turn on your mic?
Oh, it's not on?
Oh, there we go. Thanks. We have your name. You have 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
I think there's some confusion about near-campus neighborhoods. I'm a little bit confused. I did write a letter, but I'm confused since then. There's a 3-bedroom limit in near-campus neighborhoods, and there's a history of why there's a 3-bedroom limit. And if you were to build a brand-new house on an empty lot, then it would be a 5-bedroom limit. And so if you're adding the 3-bedroom limit, it applies even if you're adding an extension to the house. And I'm here to say that it should also apply if you're converting a garage or you want to put another small house at the back of the property. And I understand why developers are wanting to free up the bedroom, but I live in a near-campus neighborhood, and there's good reasons that there are restrictions, and that's because these neighborhoods are very temporary. There's a lot of temporary housing. And in my street, in the summer, my house is the only one that's occupied. The rest of the houses are empty. Last year, I had to ask people to leave from my neighbor's house. There was a pop-up encampment there. After I asked them to leave, they broke in. And it was up to me to call the police because the landlord's absent. There's nobody in the house. These are real problems, and they're directly related to the fact that student housing is temporary housing. And I don't want more of the same. These neighborhoods can be very difficult to live in. And I think that it's important to recognize why there was a 3-bedroom cap in the first place. There was no cap before. So we know what that's like. So I recognize it. And, you know, people are having a hard time affording. Affordable housing is difficult for every person, not just students, but everybody. And the neighborhoods are best if they're mixed. So you have students, but then you have families, and then you have everyone in between. That's what makes a neighborhood vibrant and what makes it safe. So what's happening with developers is they're taking that apart. So I would appreciate if the status quo was upheld. You can always go back later and look at it again, but I feel like there's a bit of confusion right now, and there's good reason to put a cap on it, and it should apply both to any additional units and if you want a freestanding structure at the back of your property. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look for the next speaker. Please, ma'am, give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Therese Rutan. I live in Soho, and not only is there a large housing encampment, my neighbors and friends are needing to move because properties are sold, rent evictions, and they can't even afford to have their own private apartment anymore. They need to share with perfect strangers. So I've been wanting to have a tiny house built on my property. The restrictions are, my property is unusual. The boulevards are like 15 feet deep. It's a northwest property, and all of my front yard is owned by the city. So I don't think I can get permission to have a tiny house, even though I have a side yard that would accommodate a tiny house, and it would still fit in alignment with my house and my neighbors, so it wouldn't be an eyesore. And I have been a landlord most of my life. I always charge affordable rent. Currently, there's a duplex there. My tenant pays $735 a month. I wouldn't charge much for the tiny house either, because I think people need to be able to afford the cost of living. I also am concerned about food. I see John Fleming is in the, I planted an orchard on my property. I happily share the produce. I facilitated the planting of an orchard in our neighborhood, again, because I am concerned about the rising cost of living, both in housing and food. And I would like to be a part of the process that actually helps, even though it's such a tiny portion. I would like a tiny house built on my property. I've been in conversation with Gabriel Gatteau. He's in the Quebec-Ontario border. He was originally a hemp farmer who went into the construction industry, now builds natural hemp homes. He would prefab a tiny hemp natural house for me to move on my property. But again, I don't think I can get approval. Can you help me out?
Okay. Thank you. I'll look for the next speaker. Mr. Zaifman, please go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for hearing me out. Jared Zaifman, CEO of the London Home Builders Association. I was hoping to be here for item 3.7. Our healthcare system got me out of there quickly, but not quite quickly enough, but I made it for this one. So simply just wanted to share support for 3.7 and appreciate the support on that and all of staff's work. Specifically on 3.8 as well, very much appreciate the opportunity that we've had to interact with staff and provide feedback. Certainly the ability now to have additional dwelling units or additional residential units in duplexes and triplexes is certainly an issue that was raised, certainly a concern from our members and brought to the attention, so appreciate that being cleared up. And certainly as well, now being able to have the 5-bedroom limit removed so that these additional dwelling units can actually be utilized to the best possibility across the city, whereas previously with the 5-bedroom limit, it extremely limited how much or how many additional dwelling units could be constructed across the city. This should be quite a driving force, we hope, in adding density across the entire city, something that we absolutely need in all forms across the city. So this is great to see, and again, just want to thank staff for their work on this. I think we're always trying to see where process improvements can be made and where things can be simplified and restrictions be removed in the hopes of adding housing across the city and making housing more affordable and more options for more people across the city. So thank you very much, and certainly encourage your support on this item today.
Thank you. Look to the next speaker. Mr. Wallace, you have 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, councilors, for hearing me again. I want to echo what Jared had to say. This is a politically difficult issue, and I think staff handled it very well. We would encourage you to support what staff are putting in front of you in terms of removing the bedroom limit across the city and the changes that they're recommending for the near campus neighborhoods. Speaking not as on infill issues, which somewhat different, but one of my members has already started the process of developing community neighborhoods with an additional unit already within the building, with a full kitchen, access to the outside without having to go through the front door or anybody else's door, bathrooms, so that we are providing more density, more opportunities for home ownership, and for people to be able to get into these properties and then have some rental income to go with it, providing more housing. All of that is good news, and I think you'll see more of that come in new developments as we go forward. It won't be taken up by everyone, but we think that has a real opportunity. The one issue, two things I want to keep in mind is that, this is a relatively large change. I think it'd be appropriate that maybe in 2 years we come back again and have a revisit and see how it's going and see what the uptake is, particularly on infill, and whether that additional residential unit in backyards is actually materializing as we are hoping it does. And the other thing that I think we need to recognize, I know staff are not supportive, but I think you're going to have to look at driveway widths. If you want our development community to be building additional units on these lots, they're not going to be downtown. They're likely not going to be around Western. They may be some around Fanshawe. But they're going to be in what you guys determine as the burbs, to me, it's not the burbs coming from the GTA, but and the chances are that those who are renters in these additional dwellings will need a car. They're just going to, like, no one's kidding each other. They're going to need a vehicle. We will need the driveway space for somebody to park if you want an uptake on the number of additional residential units that will be built, purposely built in this community. I'm not going to ask for anything today on it, but it's something that I think needs some further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look for the next speaker. Mr. Fleming, I'm glad to hear you're recognized in the food industry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually had no idea, but
please, please go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
thank you. My name's John Fleming, and I'm with City Planning Solutions here in London. And I have with me my client, Steve Kopp and Matt Kopp of Kopp's Backyard Homes.
Mr. Fleming, can you raise your mic just a bit? We're just having a little trouble picking you up.
Yeah, how's that? Is that okay?
Yeah.
You know,
Is there a way to raise the, because you're such a tall fellow, is there a way to?
I can.
This brings you back to your roadie days.
Yeah, it's kind of stuck down here. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, I'll start again.
Much better, thank you.
Great, thank you. My name is John Fleming, and I'm with City Planning Solutions, and my client is Kopp's Backyard Homes, and I have here with me Steve Kopp and Matt Kopp, and I believe that Steve would like to say just a couple words after I'm done. I'd like to start out by thanking staff. They have been, as others have mentioned, really great through this process. It's not easy, and we had a lot of dialogue, and there's a lot of pushback from staff, but I think appropriately so, trying to strike a good balance between protecting residential amenity and actually allowing the opportunity for these uses to happen, because they're not going to happen in a big way, in a meaningful way with the current zoning that's in place. I'd like to thank Heather and her team, Justin Adama, Nancy Passato, and fairly new planner, Brandon Coveney, who was really great to work with. All of them were through this process. And I think it's pretty impressive with the direction of council. They got it here in January, which I think it was just October that you asked them to bring this fairly substantial amendment forward. I know that council struggled with the idea of affordable housing and the housing crisis in London. And in order to address it, they really need to think out of the box. And council's been doing that in lots of different ways. But it's not just about those people that are in crisis, those people with precarious housing situations and health issues. It's also about a lot of average Londoners that just can't afford to rent housing anymore. And these kinds of additional residential units are part of the puzzle to address that issue that's in our city. These types of uses where you're actually taking or building a new unit in a backyard, they take advantage of existing services. These are the costly roads and sewers that you're all dealing with through budget processes. Existing communities are in place with parks and community centers. These tend to eliminate the cost of land, or at least minimize the cost of land, which helps them to be affordable. They're the lightest forms of intensification out there. They help with affordability of home ownership, so it's attract to home ownership and helps the affordability of that as well, to subsidize that paying of the mortgage through a rental stream. And they help to create affordable ground-related rental units, which is really key here. And finally, they allow for families to stay together, family units. Seniors, for example, that need supports can be close to their families. And we know that the province has laid down regulations to require that cities allow for these uses, but it really comes down to these kinds of amendments to make them happen. The changes being proposed, we think, are critical to make detached additional residential units possible in London. You can't expect homeowners to go forward with these. There's a lot of risk. It's an uncertain new form of housing. They're not going to go forward if they have to go through a zoning amendment process or a minor variance process. Kopp's Backyard Homes It's one thing to make a policy change or a regulatory change to the zoning, but it's another to have a private sector partner such as COPS, well-trusted, 145 years as a local business. They have the financial might to actually make a difference and take those regulations and make something happen here in London. And they're wanting to do that. They're looking at the possibility of expanding an existing manufacturing establishment in favor of, or to allow for the prefabrication of these units. They can deliver these to properties completed. With the windows in place, the cabinets, the drywall set to go. So this is a way to get a lot of these units on the ground. When you build it that way, you're not having to deal with weather conditions, daylight, and all the other issues that arise when you're building on site as opposed to in a factory. And as a private sector partner, they have the marketing smarts and ability, the promotional skills, and the trust of the community to actually get these out there. I'll just follow up by saying we're, after a lot of dialogue, supportive of the amendments. It's not exactly what we're after, but the amendments that are coming to you today by staff, Scott and his team, Heather and her team, we think strike a good balance, and we are in full support of all of the amendments that are before you today. I'd now like to, through you, Mr. Chair, if it's okay, just introduce Mr. Kopp for a couple of words.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming.
Sorry, you think
Mr.
John...
Kopp, you have 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
I won't take it. You think John's tall. So I just would like to thank the staff. You know, when we started working from the first meeting, they understood what we were trying to do, which was like lightly densify neighborhoods with our backyard homes. And they've been tremendous to work with. And, you know, I've always been scared of City Hall, and I actually commend them for listening and helping us through the process. And, you know, what we're going to do is we're going to build some of these houses. We're going to make them affordable for the people, and we appreciate all your help. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look for the next speaker. Please, ma'am. I see you up there. Give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Jessica Halsell. I'm a property owner in the City of London. I am looking to add ADUs or ARUs to help with the housing shortage. I'm having trouble creating units with the 3-meter rear yard setback. I'm not here to push to try to change that. I do understand that it's a concern that's been brought forward. But what I'm asking for is either an amendment to bylaw item 4.37.4 or an additional document for grandfathering in the location of an existing legal non-conforming dwelling or additional unit. This is specifically for existing structures such as a detached garage that have been previously erected with permits and original setbacks. Now, through the new updates, they would require a minor variance to be considered for an ARU when it's in an accessory structure, as they would not conform to the 3-meter rear yard setback. I know when we have province-wide changes coming for incentives such as increasing housing, that we like to compare it to other municipalities. The bylaw setbacks for Hamilton ARUs are actually 1.2 meters on both the rear and the side yards. Our London rear yard setback is actually 3 meters. But Hamilton also has a grandfathering document for additional dwellings that are legal non-conforming in location. In this case, the city has a policy stating that if the existing building has been built prior to the passing of the new zoning bylaw and does not meet the requirements of that new bylaw, it would require a minor variance in every single instance. This can result in hardship and inconvenience for a property owner. Under their new policy in Hamilton, any proposed additions which do not further aggregate the existing legally established non-conforming yard setbacks shall be permitted and shall not require the application for minor variance, provided that the existing yard setbacks are maintained in the zone. I understand the consideration the city has given to the neighbors for privacy. However, our rear yard setback is significantly larger than most municipalities. There are many existing structures across the city that may also fall in this category. It would be beneficial to allow these existing structures to be grandfathered in rather than submitting many minor variance applications. There is one last consideration. I don't think that the city has actually thought about this or really made an exception. If you do have an owner requesting an ARU application but they do not have a rear yard neighbor. In this case, there would be no privacy issue. I believe that there has not been consideration for this exception for the 3-meter rear setback, and I would like to see if there would be a possibility of having one when you do not have a rear neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look for the next speaker. Please, sir, give us your name and you have 5 minutes.
My name's Theron Jones. I'm a member of the Orchard Park Sherwood Forest Community Group, and I'm part of our executive. I'm here speaking on our behalf. I'd like to first thank city staff for a very constructive process. There was a lot of back and forth. I think all sides got to understand where we stood, and we felt that the proposal that was put forward was balanced and fair based on addressing the concerns of all parties involved. The other aspect of this, I think that's really important to understand, is the fact that we've got a lot of other co-current actions going on right now. We have a federal action plan coming forward addressing international students. The University of Western's building additional residences. So there are other areas that are taking some relief on the near campus neighborhoods as far as the overall issue of addressing the student intensification and housing challenges. But today it was interesting hearing everybody's point of view. I think there was something, there was something that stood out to me, and that was there was a reference that the floor area ratio was going to be broadly applied, and there's no recommendation to apply that in a broader sense across other areas. That wasn't one of the recommendations made. But ultimately, we feel what was put forward is reasonable, it's fair, and we support it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look for the next speaker. Please, sir, give us your name and you have 5 minutes.
Sure. Good afternoon, members of PAC, through the chair. My name is John Mark Metrayer. I've been involved with near campus issues for a while now, both as a student and now as having a family living in a near campus neighborhood. And I do have to say something pretty rare and good has happened here in that we actually have some common ground I can see between near campus neighborhood long-term residents and some of the folks in the development community. So we were happy to see, for the most part, Mr. Fleming and others being okay with keeping that modified 5-bedroom cap, which was very important in near campus neighborhoods. So I support that, and I think, it's, when there's that kind of compromise reached between two groups that have often been at loggerheads, that should be respected. There was a comment raised about how that graduated bedroom cap would only allow single-bedroom units. And I'm sure city staff can answer this better than I can, but that's not how I read it. It gives you 1 extra bedroom for the total cap, but you can still divide that up. Three 2-bedroom units, I think, was an option, for example. So that's, I don't think that concern is valid. I put a letter on the agenda just about, I think the setbacks are broadly okay, but I put a letter on the agenda just raising a risk I see where the setbacks don't vary by building height. And so you've got some situations where a developer might come and say, you're going to give me a 3-meter setback for a 2-story building or a 3-meter setback for a 1-story building. Of course, I'm going to build a 2-story building. And I think if you don't either make the setback a little bigger for higher buildings or a little smaller for single-story buildings, you might be creating some incentives there that are going against the purpose of those setbacks. A lot of neighbors might be more comfortable with a single-story ARU with a smaller setback than a monstrously high 2-story ARU. And as it's written now, in a lot of situations, the setback will be the same for both of those. I don't know that needs to be changed now. I think staff can monitor it and give appropriate variances where that creates an issue, but I just wanted to raise it. Overall, though, I think, as others have said, staff have been great on this, and I think they're owed a lot of credit for creating a a pretty good deal that works for both the development community and neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look for the next speaker. I'll ask the clerk if there's anyone online that would like to address us.
Heather Pierce.
Ma'am, please go ahead. We recognize you online. Please give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Heather, can you please unmute?
Hello, everyone. My name is Heather Pierce. I am a long-term resident of Broughdale, as was my dear departed Graham before me. I am raising my children here and feel very fortunate that we are in the school zone for Old North Public School, which is consistently ranked in the top 3 elementary schools in London, and glad to be near the Thames River Trails and 5 minutes away from hospitals and near the major transit corridor of Richmond Street connecting downtown and the north. I am deeply concerned about the poverty issues and affordable housing options for all segments of the population. My hope is that these zoning changes that will allow additional dwelling units on properties will help more people find long-term affordable housing. I do agree with the issues raised by the Broughdale Community Association in that intensification in near campus neighborhoods needs to be balanced with community needs. For now and for the foreseeable future, I support bedroom limits and floor area ratio measures. As Broughdale is located beside university campuses, there are many students that reside here and there are many student housing opportunities. I enjoy having student neighbors, as did my Graham, but it is difficult to maintain a livable community when most of the properties are short-term student rentals and vacant from May to August. Increasing the intensification of student purpose housing in this neighborhood actually limits affordable housing opportunities for families that want to live in this neighborhood for its location. Increasing student-focused housing in this neighborhood will also compound the safety and security issues for students and long-term residences. One quick example is the student parties that happen at certain times of the year. And already, so they'll probably get more significant, and already they're entirely out of control for law enforcement, and that affects citywide emergency services, paramedics, and ambulances. London is known to be a student city and is very accepting of students. However, I think it's incumbent on post-secondary institutions to create more housing opportunities for students. A new incentive for post-secondary institutions to do just that was announced yesterday by the federal government, and that is going to allow applications for low-cost financing by the end of the year, which will hopefully make housing more affordable for students and across the market as well. So in conclusion, many long-term residents in Broughdale are proud to live in this community and enjoy the neighborhood together. So I think the value of this is worth special consideration and reasonable accommodations for now and in the near foreseeable future. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look for the next speaker, the gentleman on the gallery up there. Please give us your name. You have 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Shane Saker with Saker Realty. I'll try to be quick here. First off, I just want to thank you all for the proposed amendment, and I am in support of it. My only concern is Table 1, near campus neighborhoods, the graduated bedroom limit. It's to my understanding that you can add 2 units per, I'll call it garden suite, in the backyard. So if you were to do so, if you had, for example, 5 bedrooms in the main house, and you wanted to add a garden suite in the backyard, based on this graduated bedroom limit, you could add 1 bedroom in the duplex, essentially in the backyard for each unit. So why not, so essentially in the garden suite, you're allowing 2 bedrooms total. So then why are you not allowing a garden suite to just have 2 bedrooms in 1 unit? That's sort of my question to the staff based on the graduated limit. If you can put, if you can put a duplex garden suite in the backyard, and you can have 1 bedroom in each unit, why can't you just put a garden suite unit in the backyard with 2 bedrooms? Thank you.
Thank you. Look for the next speaker. Ask clerk if there's anyone online.
Mike Bartlett.
Mr. Bartlett, please give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, through the chair. You can hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Very good. So my name's Mike Bartlett, and I'm a member of the Broughdale Community Association's Executive Committee. I've been changing my remarks quite markedly as I've been listening to other people talk, because a lot of people have said things that I'd also intended to say. I'm very cheerfully surprised by the support from the development community about the document, and echo comments from other community association people saying we haven't always agreed with the development community, so this is good. My primary reason for speaking now is to really underline support for the proposal to retain the 5-bedroom limit in London's new campus neighborhoods for all kinds of housing. I recognize that Richmond Street is a busy arterial and think that we could densify Richmond a little bit, and that might save the pressure on some of the inner neighborhoods in Broughdale. I guess the second point I wanted to make is that there seems to be a vision that the area around, not universally held obviously, that the area around Western University should primarily be used to house students. And I feel differently. My wife and I are professors emeritus at Western. We were very fortunate that my first boss said, save money and save the environment. Don't buy a second car, get exercise by living close to the university and walking to work. And we've done that for, since we moved to here in 1996. We've got the Thames River in our backyard and wonderful walking, especially on the new loops that are facilitated by the pedestrian bridges at Ross Park and the North London athletic fields. We're close to downtown. I'm delighted by the number 90 express bus that gets me from the Western Gates to downtown London in about 8 minutes. And so there is a community of permanent residents in Broughdale, and Heather just said it wonderfully, but we really do enjoy living here. It's a very comfortable community. It has pressure with student temporary housing, but by and large, I can't complain about students because they were paying my salary for 25 years. So anyway, I'll close there, but just to say, the Community Association really does think this is a good document, and we're grateful for being able to contribute and for the staff listening to our contributions. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. I'll look for the next speaker. I'll ask clerk if there's anyone online.
Through the chair, there's no one online.
Okay, looking in the gallery, it appears everyone has said their piece. Ma'am, I see you approaching the microphone. Please give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to fall. My name's Marie Bloch, and
Ma'am, can you, we're not picking you up, just.
how's that?
There we go, perfect.
Okay. My name is Marie Bloch, and I'm another Broughdale resident, and I've lived there for over 20 years. And like the previous speakers have said, it's a great place to live. It's not just a student neighborhood. One of the things that I've seen in my time there is the neighborhood did start to deteriorate. I mean, parties, noise, garbage, that stuff stops. But when there's changes to the infrastructure, that's permanent. And we started seeing lots and lots of bedrooms being added. We've already been there. When you talk about adding bedrooms, a 3-bedroom house in Roughdale, they'd get bedrooms added in the basement, 2 or 3 more in the attic. The dining room became a bedroom. There are people standing up here now saying, why can't I add more bedrooms? They've already maxed out their bedrooms. That's why. These houses, some of these houses have 7, 8, 9, 10 bedrooms. They have 7, 8, 9, 10 adult renters, 7, 8, 9, 10 cars. So the bedroom limits have had a positive impact. It's really important to keep them. The one point I wanted to make in addition to that, though, was how a studio or a tiny house or a bachelorette kind of unit would be counted. Because my concern is that someone's going to build one of those and say it has 0 bedrooms. And you might say, well, common sense would tell you something differently, but if money's to be made, people will build it. And I guarantee, if it's built and someone moves in, you're not going to come along and say demolish it. It's just going to happen. And I don't want to come down here and say, oh, see, I told you so. All you need to do is add, and this is in the Broughdale Community Association letter that is in your packet. It's kind of buried in there with all the other responses. But all the staff has to do is add a sentence that says that these 1-room plus bathroom units will be deemed to count, for the purposes of the bedroom count, as 1 bedroom. That's all. I found a couple of places. I'll bring it down and give it to the clerk later. But Kingston has added that to their zoning bylaw, as has the city of Cambridge. So I can give that to you. I've already done the research. Staff can just take a look at this and add that sentence. And if you still think it's not possible, I'll just remind you that according to Statistics Canada, these kind of 1-room units count as 0 bedrooms. So I can almost guarantee someone's going to rely on that. But I'll just ask for that to happen. And I'll also say, I'll just repeat what other people have said, that the bedroom limits is something, there is a compromise there, and I hope you support it. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers that would like to address the committee? One last check online, clerk.
Through the chair, there's no one else online.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, then I'll look for a motion to close the public participation meeting. Councillor Rahman, seconded by Councillor Hillier, and I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to, I'll put it on the floor for the committee. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
So I'm prepared to put the staff recommendation on the floor. I do have some questions for staff, but I think to help frame the discussion, I'd like to get the staff recommendation on the floor.
Okay, thank you. Can I look for a seconder? Councillor Rahman. Please go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So through you, Chair, to our staff, I think the first question I have, and a very important one, because they do exist, the issue came up about the legal non-conforming status. So I'm wondering if we can get some staff comment on existing units that are simply legal non-conforming.
I'll go to staff.
Through the chair, so any existing building would have been built prior to the regulations for additional residential units being in place, so that wasn't considered at the time in terms of potential for impact. So that's not recognized in the draft bylaw. So in order to put an additional unit in an accessory building, it would have to meet the setbacks that are established as part of this proposed amendment. And if the existing building didn't meet those setbacks, there would be a requirement to go through a minor variance process.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And next question, and we heard it referenced, and certainly last week I had the opportunity to sit and chat with Susan Bentley from the Broughdale Community Association as well. and this actually came up today, the density allowances along Richmond in particular, the fact that the near campus neighborhood areas have been mapped out for quite a long period of time, and where students live has changed since those mapping pieces have come into place. And I actually agree that within near campus neighborhoods, arterial roads still need to be looked at differently than those streets back in the neighborhood. The impact is much different when you're tucked away back in a crescent or a cul-de-sac than it is if you're on Richmond. And we want density along our arterials. Has any consideration been given to, and I recognize that this is probably a next step in this process and not something we're dealing with today, but a city-initiated zoning review, zoning housekeeping cleanup that might look at where some inconsistencies are on our housing goals with our near campus neighborhood map overlay and where existing services can handle capacity.
I'll go staff.
Through the chair, I would just say that the near campus neighborhood policies encourage intensification along those corridors. So when the policies were written, there was concern about intensification within neighborhoods and within areas planned for low density residential uses. And what was happening was that that wasn't the form of development. There was much higher density being built than what had been planned for. So the policies were set up in a way to encourage intensification along the corridors, and when they were adapted to the London plan, those policies again direct development to follow the permissions or the heights and the levels of intensity permitted in the plan. I would say we have on our work plan already a review of zoning along the corridors, and that's something we're hoping to implement through the Housing Accelerator Fund initiatives and sort of some unrelated, but it's all connected type of supporting projects. So that is underway, and we're hoping to bring that report back later this year. We've not, as part of this review, looked at the near campus neighborhood boundaries. I think that was a bit out of scope of what we were trying to do. And again, as part of trying to bring this amendment as quickly as possible, we limited the scope to just permissions for additional residential units, specifically in those detached buildings, and then also what to do with the 5-bedroom limit.
Deputy Mayor.
Okay, so that's helpful. And I know he, I'm pretty sure he won't take offense to it, but I know the primary author whose name was on the London plan is with us in the gallery today. And I know we've talked about both personally and some in presentations past how some of those heights and densities need to be revisited because they certainly did not contemplate the reality of the housing crisis today when the plan was written. So I'm glad to hear that is being reviewed. And I would say I'm less concerned about the mapping of the near campus neighborhoods than I am at looking at the height and density allowed along those primary corridors. So hearing that's coming through our zoning review citywide, I know out in my ward, Dundas Street East is being looked at in terms of what heights would be allowable along that corridor. So knowing that work is taking place, I will echo, I guess, what we heard from Mr. Wallace in the gallery. Hopefully this is an ongoing process, and we will revisit and see how things are going in a couple of years' time. I also, through you, Chair, want to pick up on one other point Mr. Wallace raised, because at the same time as this matter came forward, the matter to review driveway widths was also included in a motion at a previous committee meeting, as I recall, and it's not in here, but I agree with Mr. Wallace that this is incredibly important where we're looking at ADUs out in the suburban neighborhood place types. Certainly it's a big issue in my ward. In fact, I can tell you with a nephew who thinks he should be able to plant an ADU in my backyard instead of living at home with mom and dad, that he's going to need a parking spot if he wants to pull that trick off. So I'm wondering if staff can provide any updates as to where that driveway review is in process, because I do see it as a significant barrier to homeowners in those neighborhood place types moving forward with these kind of solutions to our housing challenges.
Now we'll go to staff.
Through the chair, we are undertaking that work currently. There was a resolution, as I recall, that was outlining that. So that would be something that we bring forward for comment through our customer service and process improvement group, and then we bring back a report to council on it. So it is on our work plan, and we're working through that right now.
Deputy Mayor.
So I just want to follow up on that. A response from Mr. Mathers is what I'm hearing, that Mr. Wallace needs to bring this up at the customer service improvement table and make it a priority there.
Through the chair, we have an ongoing reprioritization. So we got 3 items that we're working through right now. So what I'm hearing from council is that's something that's also like a council priority. So I will bring that back to the committee, and then we'll raise that as part of the priorities moving forward.
Deputy Mayor.
Great, because I think whether it's a standalone ADU or whether it's a basement conversion, whatever it may happen to be, when we're looking at those rental units, whether it's in a backyard or whether it's in a basement or an addition on the back of a home, I agree with the comment that the reality is these folks are going to need transportation, and they're going to need a place to park that transportation. So if that's a priority, to get back to us when you can, I'm fine with that. I don't need any specific direction in the motion. I know that there's lots of things on your plate. I'm not going to say I need it back by, 3 cycles or 6 cycles or whatever of this committee. I'm just happy to know that you're working on it, and I'll look forward to seeing that.
Thank you. I'll go next, Councillor Cuddy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for inviting me to your committee meeting today and allowing me to speak. I'll be supporting this motion when it comes to council, and I'm going to be encouraging all of my colleagues to support it as well. We've heard a lot about Western and about off-campus housing, and I have a similar issue at Fanshawe, which is in my ward. We've had these problems since I became a councillor, and I hear about it regularly, as does Deputy Mayor Lewis. We share similar problems with respect to housing and accommodations. So this is great. I really appreciate all the work the staff's done on this. Thank you so much. And I look forward to this coming to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Frank.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to say I appreciate the work that staff did and how quickly they did it and how much community engagement they did on this as well. And I appreciate the comments from those in the gallery. I will say the parking lot stuff, the driveways is not a priority for me. So maybe if you can balance Deputy Mayor Lewis's priority and my not priority and come somewhere in the middle. Take plenty of time on it, plenty. But I appreciate the work that you're doing and look forward to seeing this come to council.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rahman.
Thank you, and through you. And as someone that hears about driveway widths pretty often, yeah, I want to see it come forward as well. So thank you. Appreciate that comment, though, Councillor Frank. I want to echo some of the comments that have been made, very supportive of the direction that we're moving in. I agree that it doesn't address all the questions and processes that we have to look at in order to address it, but I do think that we've had very good dialogue, especially with the near-campus neighborhoods. I can tell you that having part of a near-campus neighborhood in my ward, yeah, there's definitely some concerns in the Ambleside area around the bedroom limits as well. So I think that this addresses some of those concerns and allowing too many bedrooms. So again, thank you to staff for their work on this.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Trossow.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here for this meeting. I think it was a very productive meeting. This was a very productive process. I just want to join everybody who thanked the staff. So I think you really did listen to what all the stakeholders were saying. There are a few questions, there are a few technical questions here on the table, and I'm wondering if I may ask, in terms of how you count the number of bedrooms, because we're moving away from the strict 5-bedroom limit towards a graduated model, and I think the question of how these are counted could be better. I'm not going to offer an amendment. Well, I can't. But I think the definitions could be a little tighter in terms of what constitutes a bedroom. And I would suggest that any room that meets the definition of a bedroom, in terms of it being big enough, would count as a bedroom, regardless of how it's being characterized. because I don't want to see situations where something is called a den or a sewing room or the like, when in fact the intention is for it to be a second bedroom. And similarly, the borderline between 0 and 1, I think, needs to be clarified a bit. I am very excited about what Mr. Copps said about the products that he's going to be offering, and I think that's going to create that's going to create some real opportunities for people to be able to engage in taking advantage of this new bylaw. But I think these questions about counting bedrooms needs to be refined a little bit. I am going to be at council. I'm going to be supporting what I think is a very reasonable compromise. And I'm just in closing, I'm very happy to see that there was so much engagement and that there was so much willing to listen to other people and move. We're in a different era now, and I'm very, very positive moving forward. So with the small caveat that I think we need to address some of these technical bedroom issues. I don't know if staff wants to address that now or later, but I'm very excited about this, and I'll be supporting it at council. Thank you.
So I'm not too sure if there's a question in there. I'm going to go to council. What is the definition of a bedroom? Has that been explicitly put forward?
Through the chair, so bedroom is not specifically defined in the zoning bylaw. And we don't have our zoning department here who's responsible for that interpretation, but my understanding is that they do interpret it as suggested. If it meets all the criteria of a bedroom, it would be considered as a bedroom, as well for the purpose of, say, a detached additional unit that's more of a loft style or a bachelor style. That sleeping area would also count towards the bedroom limit.
Counselor, does that kind of satisfy your query? Okay, okay, good. Are there any other comments or questions from committee or visiting counselors? If the committee would permit me, I'd like to just ask a little bit more along the bedroom vein. There was a bit of confusion, I think, up in the questions I heard from the gallery a bit. How many bedrooms, especially when we come into additional dwelling units, et cetera. Can you clarify in near campus neighborhoods the number of bedrooms permitted in an additional dwelling unit?
Thank you, and through the chair. So within near campus neighborhoods, there is no bedroom limit associated with an ARU. The bedroom limit is specifically for the property itself. So giving the example of a single family home, there is no change proposed. It's 5 bedrooms currently. It will be 5 bedrooms as proposed. If that single family home has 3 bedrooms and there's an ARU added to the property, there's the option to take the remainder of the 5 bedrooms and put those into the ARU. But yeah, strictly speaking, there is no bedroom limit on an ARU.
Okay, thank you. But my comments are this. I want to thank the public for weighing in, both those in the building industry and those from people that live in and around near campuses, et cetera. I was really impressed with the good suggestions that came forth, that I know that our planning department are always listening and considering those creative ideas that come forth that are much needed as we are in this era of hard constraints on housing and affordable housing and supply, et cetera. Thank you again for the staff for working with the community, both the developers and building community and neighborhoods in coming up with, from what I'm hearing, is reasonable variations to what we've done in the past. I'm encouraged by the senior levels of government in promoting on-campus development, because I agree with some of the comments that nothing against student behavior. I was one, and I lived in near campus on Richmond Street. But I do believe that because of the temporary dwelling needs of students, if they can be accommodated more on campus, it frees up more permanent housing for those that are living and working in London. So thank you to the community for that. So yeah, obviously I'm very supportive of staff's recommendations. Oh, and on that driveway thing, yeah, I echo comments of the deputy mayor. I know I've toured purpose-built housing with bedroom units in the basement. I think that's a great opportunity to actually afford a home if you can rent out the bottom part of your basement. But in some areas, they're constrained by small driveways that defeat the purpose of having additional person in your house. So I look forward to what comes back on that issue from our planning folks. If there's no other comments or questions, we have a motion moved and seconded, and I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, and we come to the final items, 3.9, and this is regarding 1310 Adelaide Street North and 795 Windermere Road. I'll look for a motion to open the PPM. Councilor Rahman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lewis. I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Any technical questions for staff at this time from committee members? Okay, I'll look, see if the applicant would like to address the committee. Thank you, sir. Please give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Nick Dajak. I'm a planner with Strict Bowling Monez, or SBM Limited. Here representing the owner.
Sir, could you just raise your microphone a bit? Just tilt it up to, there we go. Thank you.
Sorry, I apologize, and I'm also dealing with a little bit of a cold, so
okay,
bear
thanks.
with me here. My name is Nick Dajak with SBM. I'm representing the owner as the authorized agent on the application for the zoning. Usually I like to keep my time brief here, but I believe this application deserves a little bit of context, and the staff report is absolutely lengthy, so I appreciate everyone who's gone through and read it. The owner has also submitted a memo with regard to this application, providing additional context. And basically what I would like to address are 2 items, essentially the intensity of use and the floodproofing on the site. Just to go back a little bit, this application definitely would have met the 90-day review timeline. It goes back to 2016 with an application with a former developer and user was looking to develop the lands. So, and at that time, there was an understanding that an application would be entertained for replacement structures in the floodplain to replace an existing single-family home and the former Good Life Fitness building. So, in 2020, when the current owner had approached the city and then developer and acquired the lands, there was an understanding that a potential commercial development could be entertained up to 975 meters square. And there was an understanding that additional parking could be accommodated on the site, up to 77 parking spaces, as long as the site could be flood-proofed. So in 2020, that is where we started. The first point of moving forward was flood-proofing the site, showing how a potential development could be accommodated within the floodplain. Matrix Solutions was retained, and there were several iterations of flood-proofing, dealing with the Conservation Authority and city staff to come to a solution that was acceptable to all. I believe there was up to 8 different modeling exercises submitted to the Conservation Authority 2020, 2021, 2022, and finally 2023. So it's been ongoing, different iterations, different site plan layouts, different modeling techniques. And what you have before you is something that has been heavily engineered and heavily thought out and has been accepted in terms of floodproofing by all parties. And what we have is essentially a site that is flood-proof. The development area would be high and dry in the regulatory event of 1 in 250-year flood event. It's done by increasing the land to be high and dry, creating 2 diversion channels that would divert waters around the development site, while all maintaining very little or no impact to the surrounding uses. The other thing is maintaining emergency access available to the site, through which would be accommodated through Adelaide, which is a higher elevation than Windermere. So once floodproofing has been accommodated, which we believe it has, and we have the reports to kind of document that, it was creating a layout and a use that would be appropriate for the site. So under our understanding that 975 meters square would be an appropriate commercial use, several layouts have been provided to staff that showed a drive-through and in a commercial building with multiple smaller retail units. And there was a list of uses that were provided to the city staff in 2020. This application has been ongoing. We've been discussing, there's been a lot of dialogue on what the use in the site could be. There was even options provided to staff to explain what this site could be and what the preferred route would be for an ultimate application that was finally submitted. We got the response from staff that a drive-through and the retail unit commercial would be the preferred application. And we had made the application in 2023. So where we are today is an issue that we have in the staff report that we don't agree with in terms of intensity of use and what is appropriate for the site area. As I mentioned, there was an agreement that potentially up to 77 parking spaces could be used for the site. We are now at, I believe, 36 with an additional 12 temporary stacking lane parking spaces, so a total of 48 parking spaces on site, which is temporary. So I think the staff are recommending the maximum of 33 parking spaces in their recommended bylaw. We're at 36 with 12 stacked parking lane. So we're not far off in terms of
30
parking.
seconds.
The other items in terms of intensity of use, they use hours of operation as well as the number of units, which would be increase the intensity of the site. We don't object to reducing the number of units, commercial units, if that is required to do so, as well as incorporating hours of operation, which can be done through zoning bylaw. So I'll leave it at that and open to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look for any other speakers to this item. Hello, you have 5 minutes. Please give us your name and go ahead.
My name is Stephanie Pratt. I'm the planning coordinator at the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. We've been working with a few different applicants over the years. First, it was a different owner, and then Farhad brought up the property, as Nick mentioned. So I'll try not to repeat too much of what Nick has provided here as a summary. But at the end of the day, the Conservation Authority's goal is to ensure that we protect people and property from hazards such as flooding. This property in particular has been known to flood on numerous occasions, with examples from the Waltzing Weasel and existing commercial development in that area. Staff since 2015 have been working on this application and have been of the opinion that there is potential to replace a commercial building on this property, meeting about 10 different tests of our policy manual. We have made good progress. As Nick had mentioned, there's been a lot of effort undertaken through modeling and different engineering designs to try and get this to a point where everyone can be in agreement to move forward. And at the end of the day, the Conservation Authority needs to issue a permit under the Conservation Authorities Act for this development. So I'll just run through some of those tests briefly. They are detailed in our letter, which has been submitted alongside the staff report that Nancy has prepared. First and foremost, as Nick mentioned, there's floodproofing, which the engineering has done to the extent feasible. The footprint size has been slightly reduced from that was existing on the site before. The flood risk has been achieved to the extent feasible as well, with the exception of access along Adelaide and Windermere. There's also been studies that have undertaken, such as stormwater management and the modeling, which has shown that there is decreased risk by doing the channel that goes along the property. At the end of the day, we still also need our hearing to move forward, which will have to occur before our board of directors or a subset of our board of directors. In terms of the intensification of use,
There was one residential unit as well as one business that were on this property before. We have seen an increase in the number of units that are proposed on this property, as well as an increase in the number of parking spaces and the type of the use that's being proposed. We have submitted a list of uses that would be in alignment with the parking requirements that were in place before, and something that the Conservation Authority would be in support of to move forward. So we're looking to keep working with the landowner to make sure that the uses are something that our staff would be able to issue a permit on. And aside from that, we're happy to keep working with everyone through this process, but our recommendation would be to modify the proposal and remove the drive-through at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look for the next speaker on this item before us. I'll ask the clerk if there's anyone online.
Dan Windsor.
Please, sir, give us your name and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Dan Windsor, and I'm the owner of Tin Cup Mini Putt and Driving Range. We're on the north side of Windermere at Adelaide, and I have the most to gain, aside from the developer, if this were to be approved. I probably would get increased traffic, better visibility, spin-off sales, giving me more revenue. Looking ahead, an approved change on this zoning for the floodplain area may open the doors to allow applications by me or future owners to further develop my property. As the applicant proposes, I could change the elevation on my property on a small portion of it and dig basically a moat around it to move the water around. But as a community business celebrating its 50th year here, we have to look at the impact on the wider community, local community, and that serves and supports us. Now, one of the previous speakers was talking about drainage. Now, if you recall the February 2018 flood of the area, both the Waltzing Weasel and ourselves incurred substantial damage. The floodwater took quite a while to recede, as the lion's share of the water had to cross our property and squeeze through a 20-foot opening under Adelaide Street. Any grade change or additional paved areas on the proposed development site would exacerbate the flooding and consequential damage on the proposed property and our abutting property. Now, the previous speaker has said that their property would be protected, and I'm sure it would, but nobody's spoken to us at all about where this water would be going. Now, right now, parking on that area is stone and gravel, which would absorb the water, and they're proposing doing a paved area. And now, in addition to that, the water has to go somewhere. So my concern there is that it is going to be going into everywhere but their property. Now, traffic. We see this area used extensively by London residents, groups walking, biking down to the green space, down along the walking trails at the Thames, and even elementary schools coming to use our facilities as well. Even without the fast food restaurant and strip malls, I often hear and see cars racing down to the end of Windermere towards the river. So this further intensification of the area would be a danger to pedestrians. 3, the increased accident potential. The proposed entrance off the east side of Adelaide Street would cause a collision hazard without a dedicated right turn lane. The turning lane from Adelaide north and south to Windermere was never properly laid out to allow you to see oncoming traffic. I know this because I use it on a daily basis. We see the resulting accidents. Again, access to the proposed business would increase the accidents along this area, is my feeling. Trash. Proposal of a fast food style business always generates a disproportionate amount of refuse from their single serving meals. With the proximity to the Nature Pass, city residents can expect discarded trash to migrate along Windermere Road, the pass along the river, and consequently in it. Fast food venues have decided to reduce or eliminate refuse containers on the outside of their facilities, and we've seen that all over. This more than often than not creates discarded trash in the lots in close proximity to the drive-through portion of the restaurant business. This is unsightly and attracts rodents. Lastly, increased noise. All restaurant drive-throughs create excessive noise with increased in traffic and often blaring ordering systems. I think this would be a bad choice so close to green space and a golf facility. Even at our facility, I've been transitioning to electric service vehicles where possible to reduce noise and pollution. Now, I guess weighing out all those factors, and even though this may reduce potential revenues for Tin Cup, I think that the zoning change should be denied. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other speakers that would like to address the committee? Hi, ma'am. Please state your name again, and you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, my name's Marie Blosh again. And I had no intention of speaking on this matter, but I know that area really well. And I'm just appalled. I mean, I'm just shocked that you would even consider putting a fast food joint there. That area is underwater every spring. And after listening to the last speaker, I just had to stand up and say, please listen to what he's saying. It's completely inappropriate. And the one thing he didn't mention that's there is the Caddy Shack, which is part of the city's animal adoption area, as well as the dog park. And I can tell you that the traffic it's very difficult to go to that dog park and try to turn in at certain times of the day because of the traffic. It's really hard. But it's not even just that, it's the green space. Why are we messing with where water is going? Every time people try to do that, there's unintended consequences. And it may take years. But just look at New Orleans. They are building those levees over and over again, and the river keeps knocking them down. And this is an area not with a little trickle of water, but there is a lot of water there. It is completely inappropriate to be putting that kind of a structure there. So please listen to the last speaker. Please reconsider this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers that would like to address the committee? House Clerk, if there's anyone else online?
Through the chair, there's no one else online.
Thank you. Seeing that that's it, I'll call the vote. I'm sorry, I'll look for a motion to close the PPM. I'm losing it. Thank you, Councilor Rahman and Deputy Mayor Lewis for seconding. Now I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Now put the item on the floor for committee. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had circulated through the clerk an alternate motion to committee that would approve the application that is in your e-scribe. So I will look to see if there's a seconder for that and then speak to the reason why.
Okay, I'll look for a seconder for Deputy Mayor's motion. I'll second that motion, and I'll go to you, Deputy Mayor.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think to start, it's important to recognize this area is already zoned for commercial use, and this application has been in process for 8 years through 2 different owners. We've heard from the Upper Thames that the floodwater engineering has been dealt with. They're still going to need to go through a Section 28 permit. That is a process that comes after we make a decision on the zoning, not before. And, excuse me, I will say, I disagree though, and the reason I'm prepared to move this is I disagree with both our staff and the Upper Thames staff, and I don't mean any disrespect to this, but I do not see a drive-through use as more intense than parking spaces, particularly when we have an overall parking reduction from the original plan. We have the same number of square footage of use on the site, and to me, it's a difference of opinion on the intensification piece. I don't think that this is inappropriate here. We have heard the applicant's representative indicate they're prepared to reduce the number of units if that's what's required. That's something that they can continue to talk through with site plan approval, and and may have to consider in their Section 28 application as well. But to me, the drive-through alone is not a reason to deny this application. And when you look through the original staff recommendation, it is really, as was mentioned, it's the intensity and the interpretation that the drive-through is more intense than parking. I think it's also important to point out that through the site plan, and we can't get this in a bonusing agreement or anything like that anymore, because again, bonusing tools have been taken away. But the applicant has committed to provide walkways and connections to the TVP for pedestrian access. There's been a commitment to actually improve our municipally owned city parking spaces. And when I say parking spaces, I mean actually return some of them to green space rather than be parking spaces, and provide a field house for the city sports activities adjacent as part of the site review plan process. So there are community benefits here. The water engineering has been addressed. Commercial use is allowed here. The only sticking point in this application, we've heard it twice, is the drive-through. And I don't think after 8 years, rejecting an application because a drive-through is being deemed more intense than parking spaces is really a good reason to reject it. And you know, I suspect if that's the direction we choose to go at this point, then we'll see ourselves at the OLT. But I think if we move forward with this today, there is still the Section 28 process to go through with Upper Thames that may result in some additional changes. That will be for the applicant to work through with Upper Thames. So that's why I've put this forward, and I hope committee will support it.
Thank you. I'll look for the next speaker of committee. I'll ask Councillor Robin to take the chair so I can speak to this.
Thank you. I have the chair. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is a challenging, for me, it's a challenging decision, mostly because it's on floodplain. However, I do know the existing structures have been there forever, and maybe if they were green space, that'd be another issue, but they're not. As the Deputy Mayor said, this still has to go through Upper Thames, and they're the experts in flood mitigation. So to hold this up because of a drive-through or other issues, I feel more confident in proceeding and see where this lands with Upper Thames, and if they can work with the developer to get their blessing. So that is why I will be supporting that.
Thank you. I'll return the chair to you, Councillor Frank, and then myself on the speakers list.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Frank.
Thank you very much. I just want to say thank you to the applicant and the consultant as well for the work that they've done. I know 8 years is a very long time, and I know that they've made every effort to try and work within the process. I won't be supporting the Deputy Mayor's suggestion. I think that it will flood, even though it's been flood-proof to 250 years. I think with climate change, we're only going to see more and more extreme weather events, and I think that is a that's just a reality, and so I won't be supporting this. I appreciate, again, everything that they've done and the field house and the work in trying to add more green space, but I think it's just a matter of when this floods, not if. And I just don't think it's a suitable location for any development. I know that there used to be commercial there. I think there used to be a lot of things across the city that we used to do and we don't do now. So despite that legally being, you're legally allowed to still build within the square footage, I don't think it's a logical thing to do. But if this does go forward, I will encourage other councillors, if it goes to Upper Thames for Section 28, to not be upset then perhaps with any conclusions that they arrive at or any additional time that has, because I think essentially then we're just kicking this down to Upper Thames to deal with. So I won't be supporting the Deputy Mayor's amendment, but appreciate the effort.
Thank you. I'll look for any other speakers. Councillor Robin.
Thank you, and through you. So first, again, thank you to the applicant and I appreciate the amount of time it's taken to have this discussion back and forth with city staff and with the Upper Thames, and thank you to both staff and Upper Thames for your work on this as well. I did have a question, though. In the deputy mayor's motion, you're referring, or in your comments, sorry, he was referring to the intensification being only specific to the drive-through, and I'm just wondering if staff can comment on that. I know I sent an email earlier asking about just if the intensification has just to do with the drive-through, or is it the fact that it's more intense because there's other buildings as well?
I'll go staff.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The intensification issue is actually because of the multiple uses that are also being possibly developed on the site. So it's what was previously a commercial use plus the residential building is now potentially 4 to 5 different commercial uses on the site, as well as the drive-through. When it comes to the intensification consideration, Upper Thames has its own set of criteria, and when we were reviewing this, obviously, it's not an apples-to-apples sort of thing, unfortunately, but in this particular case, adding the restaurant plus the drive-through plus the multiple buildings on the site, ultimately, we determined that it was too intense for the site. So,
Councillor.
Thank you, and through you. So I will be supporting the staff recommendation on this. I do think at this point, what we're hearing is that staff have weighed in on that intensification, and it's not just specific to the fact that all of a sudden the McDonald's was entered into the conversation and a drive-through. I think that what we're hearing is that based on the modeling and based on what we're seeing with the intended use, that there needs to be more consideration given to how the site is being used. So I will be supporting what staff have put forward, and I know that it extends the process or puts the process back into play with the applicant and what they can use the property for, but I do think there's opportunity for more discussion and to come back with something in the future. So I will not be supporting the amendment, and I will support the staff recommendation if it's put on the floor.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions before? Councillor Trussell.
Thank you again. I just want to briefly state that at council, I will be supporting the staff report, and I will not be supporting this amendment. In particular, I'd like to point out to the reference to the provincial policy statement 2020, which permits development and site alteration, quote, in those portions of hazardous lands where the effects and risk to public safety are minor. I don't think, given what we know, given what we've observed, that these are minor. And I think that that is something that I'm very happy to take to an appellate body, because I think it's a very, very reasonable position to take. So I think, you know, yes, of course, I want to see what the agency does on their application. But I think the staff report here gives us really good grounds to sort of step back and say no to this. So I will be supporting the staff report again at council, and I really want to thank the operator of the golf course, because I think that's the type of civic engagement that we really need more of in this town. And I'm so impressed with what he said, in light of the fact that from a pure commercialization point of view, this could help his business. But he's really looking at this from a community point of view. And I just appreciate that so much. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me. I wasn't going to make a comment here, but I could see where this may be going. I would encourage the committee to support the staff's recommendation. And the reason I am asking that you support the staff recommendation is I do appreciate the work that the developer has done throughout the past 8 years. There's a lot of work to be done on this property. I know it well. All my 3 kids have played soccer right next to this property. And I know how it floods and the challenges that are in this area. I do have a question through you, Mr. Chair, regarding the Section 28. We did hear from Upper Thames on Section 28, and I would like to have a better understanding if the amendment is supported, and we know the challenges of building this development. What is the process going forward? Is there an opportunity even for the developer to go ahead to the OLT? I'm just wanting to understand what we're doing here with this amendment and how it's going to look like going forward.
I'll go to staff on that question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of the Upper Thames process, I'm not sure what the recourse is if, let's say, a Section 28 permit is not granted. I would have to defer to my friends at the Upper Thames. But I think there is an appeal mechanism, but I'm not 100% on what that embodies, if that's at the OLT or whether it's through their board of directors, which is essentially who would also issue those types of considerations. So unfortunately, I can't answer that.
Councillor?
I've got some homework then to do before this comes to council. The other question I had, the applicant is able to, this has not come to committee at all. I just want to know a bit of the background on the history of this. So there has not been an application approved. I see some no's to that question through you, Mr. Chair.
Now, I'll start with staff on that and maybe go to the applicant if, on the history.
Through you, Mr. Chair, from what my research during this application, there was no previous application for this site. It is in the green space, it was previously in the open space designation through the 1989 plan, and at some point, I believe, maybe through the 1992 zoning bylaw, potentially, we added, or it was added for just the commercial recreation use through an open space special provision zone. So that's, I'm not sure at what point that was added, but I believe it was somewhere around the 92 zoning bylaw when it was adopted.
Does that satisfy your inquiry, Councillor?
It does, and
Okay.
I would like to encourage the committee not to support the amendment and to really encourage the developer to continue working with the authority and with city staff. We all want something to be built there, and there are opportunities for development, but I have grave concerns when we build on a wet land. So with that, thank you for allowing me to make those comments.
Thank you. I'll go to Ms. McNeely.
Thank you. Through the chair, Upper Thames representatives are here that they would be happy to answer the question that Councillor Hopkins had requested.
The councillor was satisfied with the answers that she received from staff, so I will leave it at that. I asked her for that opportunity, and she was okay. Thanks. Any other, Councillor Primal?
I would just like to make a comment as this area is in my ward. And first of all, I do want to thank again, and I received the email from Mr. Windsor, who owns the Tin Cup as well, and no doubt that he had some very valid points. Having said that, all the work that honestly has been done, which was already said by our staff, by the applicant, by the developer, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I really was hoping that this would, in terms of the motion, that it would, the motion by the deputy mayor, that it would move forward, because I believe that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Section 28 would give the opportunity actually to work together with the applicant without slowing it down and coming to a conclusion in terms of the number of the units, in terms of the, as far as I know, I think the meters of the space, the GFA is the same, 976. So please correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't want it, again, to go and start from the scratch and back, but let's move forward. And one of the councillors said, let's not, this decision wouldn't be to put the pressure on or to have the Upper Thames to do the decision instead of us. No, I wasn't looking at that whatsoever, and I would actually very much respect their views, but if you can let me know in terms of the Section 28, if this would be the opportunity to get to move forward, make adjustments without starting from at point zero again.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from committee members or visiting counselors? Okay, we have a motion that's been moved and seconded, and I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 3-2.
Thank you. That concludes the items. There are no items for direction. We're at 5.1 deferred matters list. I'll look for a motion to receive that. Deputy Mayor Lewis, I guess seconder on that, please. Councilor Rahman. Any discussion? Councilor Lewis. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, I just want to draw attention that item 7, after this report, given that it was adopted by committee today, if approved by council, will be able to be removed from the deferred items list.
Go to staff.
Item 7 on the ARUs, the report on that was today, so I'm confirming that should council approve the decision of committee today, that will get removed.
Go to staff.
Thank you for the question. I believe that would be for the clerk to respond to.
I'll ask the clerk.
Through the chair, that will be removed for the next cycle.
Thank you. Councilor Rahman.
Thank you, and through you, just a question, because that does also contain information about the driveway width policy. I'm just wondering if we remove it, if it has any implications, because we still haven't finished that part of 7.
Staff, does that have any implications on that policy?
Through you, the chair, we would prefer to keep it in. We could certainly separate out the driveway widths, but it's still ongoing. We certainly want to address that matter that was raised.
Okay. I'll go to Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments on that. I think then it would be best to keep it in because the driveway widths review was specific to additional dwelling units as well, or additional residential units, whatever term we're using. This week, it seems like we flip-flop, but since it is tied to the additional residential units, I think we'd be best to leave that in then for the next few cycles until that driveway piece comes back.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the clerk, do we need to make a specific motion to keep that on deferred matters?
Through the chair, no, I will not remove that from the deferred list.
Okay, thank you. So I'll look. We've got a motion moved and seconded. If there's any other further comments on that, if not, I'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Look for a motion for adjournment. Councilor Rahman, look for a seconder. I'll second the motion. Hand vote, all in favor of adjournment. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Keep forgetting. I had a question there. What's that? I had a question there. Did it stop? I cut it off. Oh, did I really? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Just no, because that's all.